Chapter 989. Stop the auction. What the hell is going on? Outside the auction house. When the staff went out and said that today's auction was over, it immediately caused a huge commotion. Everyone was discussing, but the staff did not give any explanation. After everyone left, the guards of the trading pavilion immediately sealed off all the entrances of the auction house, not allowing anyone to set foot in. At the same time, lounge. The staff of the trading pavilion quickly brought over 4 chairs. Young Master Hao helped Qin Feiyang over and sat on a chair in the middle. Then he sat beside Qin Feiyang. The Phantom Snake Emperor also turned into an exquisite bracelet and coiled around Qin Feiyang's wrist. Wang Yuer sat on the other side of Qin Feiyang. Fu Xiong looked at the empty chair and did not dare to sit down. He stood at the side with a look of fear. For a moment, the 4 of them did not speak, and the lounge fell into dead silence. About 100 breaths passed. A middle-aged man, reeking of alcohol, hurriedly ran into the lounge. It was Shen Feiyun. When he saw young Master Long lying in a pool of blood, his body could not help but tremble, and his hands could not help but clench tightly. Shua! Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang and the other 2, a cold light surging in his eyes, and said, "Who killed him?" "Me," Wang Yuer said indifferently without the slightest fear, looking straight at Shen Feiyun. Boom! As soon as Wang Yuer finished speaking, a terrifying killing intent roared out from Shen Feiyun's body. Young Master Hao raised his eyebrows and said, "Shen Feiyun, before you act, think carefully. Don't use the people behind you to pressure me. You have to pay with your life for killing." Shen Feiyun shouted coldly. That terrifying killing intent turned into a stormy wave, pouncing towards Wang Yuer. Seeing this, Fu Xiong, who was at the side, glanced at Qin Feiyang and the other 2, then looked at Shen Feiyun, and a cold smile flashed in the depths of his eyes. "Humph!" Wang Yuer snorted coldly. The 9-star battle saint's holy aura surged out and collided with Shen Feiyun's killing intent. A destructive wave of air suddenly appeared. Puff! Immediately, Wang Yuer spat out a mouthful of blood and her face turned pale. Qin Feiyang and young Master Hao, who were standing next to him, also bore the brunt of the blast. They were blown away by the blast and crashed into the wall behind them like meteorites. Boom! With 2 loud bangs, 2 large holes appeared in the wall. The 2 of them fell directly into the auction hall outside. Their bodies cracked and blood spurted out like a fountain. One had to know, Wang Yuer was a 9-star battle saint, and Shen Feiyun was clearly stronger than Wang Yuer. Therefore, how could Qin Feiyang and Yi Shiwen withstand the fluctuations of battle that were born from their confrontation? This strike was fatal. But in comparison, young Master Hao was slightly better. After all, he wasn't injured before. As for Qin Feiyang, the poison in his body had yet to be completely removed. If he were to suffer this fatal blow, it would undoubtedly be one disaster after another. At this moment, he lay on the shattered ground, not even having the strength to stand up. His consciousness was also fading away. Whoosh! In the meantime, seeing the situation of Qin Feiyang and young Master Hao, Wang Yuer's expression changed slightly. She quickly got up and landed beside them. Then she took out the healing elixir and stuffed it into their mouths. The elixir melted in their mouths and repaired their bodies. Their condition improved slightly. Whoosh! But at this moment, Shen Feiyun chased after them, full of murderous intent. Wang Yuer's face darkened and she shouted, "If you continue to be unreasonable, don't blame me for being rude. You killed my son and said that I'm being unreasonable. Do you really think that you can do whatever you want here just because you're Wang Su's granddaughter?" Shen Feiyun's eyes were like lightning and his expression was extremely cold. He was like a god of death, making people tremble in fear. Young Master Hao's expression changed and he said to himself, "Oh no, he has been blinded by anger. Quickly send a message to my father for help." It's useless. Before we set off, Gongsun Bei told me that when we leave Divine City, no matter what danger we encounter, he won't give us any help. So now we can only rely on ourselves. Qin Feiyang struggled to get up and said in a low voice, "What? Young master, Hao was stunned. Isn't this old man too heartless?" Qin Feiyang glanced at young master Hao and sent a sound transmission to Wang Yuer. "How strong is he?" "I'm not sure, but he's definitely a war king," Wang Yuer replied, her tone extremely solemn. "That's not good," Qin Feiyang muttered. If not for young master Hao and Wang Yuer, it would have been fine. He could have entered the castle, and even if Shen Feiyun was heaven-defying, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. But now, he could only stay outside and take the risk with the two of them. Suddenly, his brows raised slightly as he raised his head to look at Fu Xiong, who was standing in the lounge above. This person knew their identities and even knew the whole story of young Master Long's poisoning. But why didn't he help? And Fu Xiong, who had been watching Wang Yuer and Shen Feiyun, suddenly realized that Qin Feiyang was looking at him. A trace of panic flashed past his eyes. Next, he pretended to have just reacted and shouted, "Shen Feiyun, what are you doing?" Following that, he took a step forward and stood in front of Shen Feiyun, protecting Qin Feiyang and the other two behind him. "Something's wrong." Qin Feiyang looked at Fu Xiong's back as his eyes flickered. He kept having the feeling that Fu Xiong's current actions were too deliberate. Shen Feiyun stopped in his tracks and sneered, "What am I doing? Of course, it's to avenge my son." Fu Xiong said, "You don't have the right to mention the word revenge, because this matter is your son's fault to begin with." "My son's fault?" Shen Feiyun raised his eyebrows. "That's right. Your son poisoned the tea and almost poisoned Brother Mu. That's why I miss you, or killed him in a fit of anger." Fu Xiong said, "Impossible. I've already told my son their true identities. He definitely won't harm them again." Shen Feiyun shook his head. "Do you think that your son will stop just like that? Go outside and ask, who doesn't know that he's a narrow-minded person who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance?" Fu Xiong sneered. Shen Feiyun frowned. "You don't even know what kind of person your son is. Aren't you too incompetent as a father?" Fu Xiong said with undisguised sarcasm. Shen Feiyun clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, "Where's the evidence?" "When the incident happened, a staff member of my trading pavilion happened to be present. When she wakes up, she will naturally tell you the truth. I'll go and check on her now." After Fu Xiong finished speaking, he flew into the lounge again and squatted beside the woman in red. He lowered his head and checked on the woman in red. But suddenly, he glanced at Qin Feiyang and the other two below from the corner of his eyes. A cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Immediately, a wisp of undetectable battle chi emerged from his fingertip and entered the heart of the woman in red like lightning. The unconscious, red-clothed woman didn't even have the chance to scream before she died on the spot. And all of this was not seen by Qin Feiyang and the others, because the lounge was on the second floor and the auction house was on the first floor. The sight of Qin Feiyang and the others would be affected. Moreover, when Fu Xiong made his move, he deliberately used his body to block the sight of Qin Feiyang and the others. Therefore, they didn't know that the woman in red had been killed. After killing the woman in red, the coldness in Fu Xiong's eyes became stronger, but he teleported to cover it up. Then, his face suddenly changed and he exclaimed, "How could this be?" What? Qin Feiyang and the other two were surprised. Fu Xiong turned to look at the three of them and murmured, "She's dead." "Impossible." Young master Hao shook his head decisively. The woman in red's injuries were indeed very serious, but she had taken the heart-protecting pill and healing pill in time. Even if it couldn't heal the woman in red's injuries, at least it wouldn't be a problem to save her life. But how could she be dead? Wasn't there no evidence now? At the same time, Qin Feiyang looked at Fu Xiong, then looked at Shen Feiyun, and decisively opened a teleportation door. Then he grabbed Wang Yu, with one hand and young master Hao with the other, dragging the two of them, and rushed in without looking back. Stop! When Shen Feiyun found out, he was furious. He suddenly raised his arm and slapped the air. A wave of battle chi emerged and rushed towards the teleportation door. With a bang, the teleportation door shattered on the spot, but Qin Feiyang and the other two had already disappeared. Bastard, I won't forgive you. Shen Feiyun was mad with hatred. Fu Xiong's eyes flashed slightly and he sighed. Shen Feiyun, this matter is indeed your son's fault. You can't blame them. There are no witnesses. You can say whatever you want. Now I suspect that you are in cahoots with them. Shen Feiyun looked at Fu Xiong with an aggressive gaze. Fu Xiong's face turned cold. He pointed to an exit of the trading pavilion and shouted, "Simply unreasonable. Get out of the trading pavilion immediately. Just wait and see. If I find out that this matter has something to do with you, I will never let you off." Shen Feiyun snorted coldly, picked up young Master Long's corpse, turned around, and strode towards the exit. "Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't be too arrogant. You know who they are in your heart. If you dare to touch them, you won't have a good ending." Fu Xiong sneered. "Even if the person who killed my son is the Heavenly King, I won't let it go," Shen Feiyun said without turning his head, his body full of killing intent. "Then let's wait and see," Fu Xiong muttered. After Shen Feiyun left the auction house, a bright smile immediately appeared on his face. Qinghai City, outside the city. In the sky above a forest, Qin Feiyang and the other two appeared out of thin air. It was the place where they landed when they came from the Divine City. As soon as they appeared, Qin Feiyang scanned the forest below vigilantly. As for Wang Yu, and young Master Hao, they were still in a state of shock. Phew! A moment later, Qin Feiyang let out a long breath and locked his gaze on a mountain peak not far away. The mountain peak was more than 5,000 feet tall and was lush with vegetation. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and swept up young Master Hao and Wang Yu. He landed on the mountain peak and said, "Let's rest here first." The two of them finally came to their senses. Young Master Hao immediately said angrily, "The only witness is dead. Aren't we too unlucky? If I had known, I wouldn't have killed young Master Long on impulse." Wang Yu sighed deeply and regretted it. Qin Feiyang glanced at the two of them and walked to the edge of the cliff. He looked down at the mountains and rivers below and pondered in silence. Young Master Hao looked at him suspiciously and walked forward to ask, "Brother Mu, what are you thinking about?" Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear. Young Master Hao looked at Wang Yu, and Wang Yu, shrugged her shoulders in confusion. After a long time, suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he said without turning his head, "It's right to kill young Master Long, because even if we leave him alive, he won't admit to poisoning us. He will only bite us back and make our situation even more dangerous." The two of them were stunned. Thinking about it carefully, it made sense. Young Master Hao asked, "Then what should we do now?" "We haven't gotten the water avoidance pearl yet." "I have the water avoidance pearl. There's no need to think about it," Qin Feiyang said. "What? You have it? Then why didn't you say so earlier?" Wang Yu raised her eyebrows and was very unhappy. If Qin Feiyang had said that he had the water avoidance pearl, they wouldn't have gone to Qinghai City, and none of this would have happened. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and turned to look at Wang Yu. "Did you ask me?" Wang Yu said, "I didn't ask, but you can take the initiative to say it." "Why?" Qin Feiyang was also angry. Wang Yu said angrily, "Because we are a team, we have to work together." "Work together? Why does it sound so funny coming from your mouth?" Qin Feiyang sneered. Wang Yu gritted her teeth and roared, "Are you going to quarrel?" If so, I'll accompany you to the end. All right, you're still in the mood to bicker at a time like this? Hurry up and think of a way. We can't be the scapegoat forever. Young Master Hao looked at the two of them helplessly. I have no choice. Wang Yu snorted, turned her head to the side, and said in a strange tone, Aren't some people very capable? Let him think. Qin Feiyang rubbed his temples and said weakly, All right, I was wrong. I'll apologize to you, okay? I'm sorry. He had figured out this woman's character. If he didn't take the initiative to compromise, there would be no end to it. Therefore, it was better to be open-minded and apologize to earn some peace. Sure enough, seeing Qin Feiyang's apology, Wang Yu's face eased a lot. Young Master Hao shook his head and smiled bitterly. He looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Brother Mu, you're the smartest one. Do you have any plan? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Young Master Hao was stunned and urged, Tell me quickly. In fact, he just asked casually. He didn't expect that Qin Feiyang was really confident. Qin Feiyang said, Let's check Fu Xiong first. Why are you investigating him? Qin Feiyang's words surprised young Master Hao greatly. Yes, he helped us. Otherwise, we would have been killed by Shen Feiyan long ago. Wang Yu also looked confused. You just look at appearances, and appearances are mostly illusions. I'm sure that Fu Xiong is definitely not that simple, and the woman in red died in such a strange way. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice. Young Master Hao and Wang Yu looked at each other, then at Qin Feiyang and asked, I'm afraid that the whole city is looking for us now. How do we investigate? That's easy. Qin Feiyang smiled confidently and looked at the two of them. Do you have any unused image crystal? I do. Young Master Hao immediately took out a brand new image crystal from his Qingquan bag. Qin Feiyang held it in his hand and looked down at the phantom snake emperor coiled around his wrist. He smiled and said, Go. The phantom snake emperor immediately rolled up the image crystal and disappeared in front of the three of them. What is it? Young Master Hao and Wang Yu didn't notice the phantom snake emperor until now. Their eyes were full of surprise. It's a phantom snake. It can change its color according to the environment. With it, it'll be easy to investigate Fu Xiong. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. Then he sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes to recuperate. Phantom snake. Damn, even such a fierce beast can be subdued. The two of them were dumbfounded. In fact, this was not a big deal. If they knew that Qin Feiyang had mastered the art of invisibility, their jaws would drop. Of course. Chapter 990. Late at night, on the streets of Azure Sea City, there were very few pedestrians. It seemed very cold and cheerless. The transaction pavilion was also closed for business. On the top floor of the trading pavilion, there was an independent room. There was a bedroom, a dining room, a tea room, and a reception hall. At this moment, Fu Xiong sat alone in the tea room with his head lowered as if deep in thought. On the tea table, the kettle was boiling, gurgling, and the fragrance of tea drifted to every corner. A moment passed. Suddenly, Fu Xiong took out an image crystal and injected a wisp of battle chi into it. Wang. Very soon, a phantom appeared out of thin air. It was Fu Anshan. Fu Xiong respectfully said, Greetings, father. Fu Anshan nodded and asked with a smile, What's the matter, sending me a message in the middle of the night? Yes, this is still good news. Fu Xiong said. Good news? Fu Anshan was stunned for a moment before his interest was piqued. Tell me about it. Fu Xiong said, Ancestor Mu has come to Qinghai City. What? Fu Anshan was shocked and asked, What is he going to Azure Sea City for? I don't know. Young Master Hao and Wang Yu are also with them. Fu Xiong said. Fu Anshan was bewildered. Why did these three people suddenly run to Azure Sea City? Fu Xiong frowned and asked, Father, did you not receive any news at all? No. Fu and Shen shook his head. Fu Xiong was extremely shocked. One had to know. His father's status in God City wasn't low either. How could he not know that young Master Hao and the other two had left God City? After regaining his senses, Fu Xiong frowned and said, In other words, they secretly came to Azure Sea City. That should be the case. Fu and Shen fell into deep thought. It was reasonable to say that ancestor admiring was running around. After all, he was a person who liked to wander around. However, young Master Hao and Wang Yu were both priceless people and had never left the Divine City before. Why did they suddenly run out? Fu and Shen said, Do your best to investigate why they went to Qinghai City. Fu Xiong asked in surprise, Father, are you suspecting that they have some sort of motive? I can't help but be suspicious. Let's not talk about Ancestor Mu and Wang Yu for now. I know young Master Hao too well. If there's nothing important, he won't leave the Divine City. I'm even thinking that their trip to Azure Sea City might have something to do with the Chief Tower Master. Fu and Shen said. Fu Xiong was secretly shocked. If it was really related to the Chief Pagoda Master, then this matter was not simple. Is this the good news you were talking about? Fu and Shen asked. Of course not. Fu Xiong shook his head and smiled. Just today, Ancestor Mu almost died in our trading pavilion. Really? Fu and Shen seemed very excited. Fu Xiong nodded and said regretfully, Unfortunately, I'm only one step away. What's going on? Fu and Shen asked anxiously. Fu Xiong recounted the entire incident in detail. After listening, Fu and Shen flew into a rage and shouted, Are you courting death? How dare you instigate young Master Long to poison them? Old man, don't worry. Young Master Long is dead. I've also killed that staff member. No one will know. Fu Xiong smiled confidently. Although you're right, this is too risky. What if the matter is exposed? Fu and Shen said furiously. It won't happen. Without a witness, Ancestor Mu and the others won't be able to defend themselves. Shen Feiyun has already determined that young Master Hao and the others killed young Master Long for no reason. And you know the grudge between Shen Feiyun and the Chief Pagoda Master. He doesn't care about the identities of young Master Hao and the other two. Right now, I'm sending people to look for them. If I find them, I'm sure that Shen Feiyun won't be merciful. Fu Xiong laughed. Fu and Shen frowned and warned, Then you'd better be careful. Don't let Shen Feiyun notice anything. Shen Feiyun is no longer the same as before. He's just a useless drunkard now. There's nothing to worry about. Fu Xiong said in disdain. What a pity for a talent. Fu and Shen sighed deeply and said, This Ancestor Mu came to the trading pavilion to embarrass me. Even if he died 100 times, it would still be difficult to resolve the hatred in my heart. If you can really make him die in Qinghai City, you can be considered to have done a great service. This is what I should do. Fu Xiong smiled politely, then suddenly thought of something and asked, Oh, right, Father. How is the position of Vice Pavilion Master? Not good. Mentioning this, Fu and Shen was worried. What is it? Fu Xiong frowned. Didn't I tell you before? I don't know where he found a medicinal pill called Juku Yellow Dragon Pill. He relied on this medicinal pill to bring rich benefits and a lot of popularity to the trading pavilion. Now, the pavilion master has the intention to let him inherit the position of Vice Pavilion Master. Fu and Shen said, his face full of worry. Then who refined this Juku Yellow Dragon Pill? Fu Xiong frowned. I don't know. I've tried all kinds of ways to pry open Li's mouth, and even humbled myself to please him, but he just won't say anything. Fu and Shen sighed. His voice was filled with anger. Fu Xiong asked, What about the others? Didn't you ask? No. Even the chief pavilion master asked. That old thing didn't say anything. What a difficult bone to chew. Fu Anshan shook his head, his eyes full of helplessness. Then this matter is difficult. Fu Xiong said. We'll see. If it doesn't work, we'll think of a way to get rid of this old bastard. Fu Anshan's eyes flashed with killing intent. He was determined to get the position of vice pavilion master, and no one could stop him. All right, let's not talk about it. Pay close attention to the movements of Xin Feiyun and young Master Hao. Once there's any news, tell me immediately. Fu Anshan instructed. Okay. Fu Xiong nodded. Then Fu Anshan turned off the image crystal. Humph, little bastard surnamed Mu. Just you wait. I will never let you return to the divine city alive. Fu Xiong snorted from his nose, and a cold, murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Then he put away the image crystal and walked towards the bedroom. However, he did notice that in the left corner of the tea room, there was a pot of green potted plant, and behind the potted plant, there was a small figure hiding. After Fu Xiong entered the bedroom, the small figure also quietly left the room. In the mountain stream outside the city, the night was as dark as ink, and it was dead silent. On the peak of the mountain, Qin Feiyang and the other two sat back to back with their legs crossed, all of them closing their eyes to rest. Whoosh! Soon, a stream of light flashed across the sky like lightning, and finally landed on Qin Feiyang's shoulder. It was the Spirit Serpent Emperor. How is it? Qin Feiyang opened his eyes and asked. Nonsense. Is there anything that I can't handle? The Spirit Serpent Emperor said proudly. He took out an image crystal from his body and threw it to Qin Feiyang. Thank you for your hard work. Qin Feiyang caught the image crystal, rubbed the Spirit Serpent Emperor's little head, and smiled lovingly. The Spirit Serpent Emperor raised its long and narrow eyes and smiled proudly. Then it turned into an exquisite bracelet again and coiled around Qin Feiyang's wrist. Qin Feiyang immediately checked the image recorded in the image crystal. Young Master Hao and Wang Yu opened their eyes one after another. After watching the image, Wang Yu suddenly stood up and said angrily, It's really this bastard behind all this. Young Master Hao was also very angry. He looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, How did you know that there was something wrong with Fu Xiong? Details. Qin Feiyang didn't explain much. Young Master Hao didn't ask much either. He shook his head and sighed. Fortunately, Father asked you to come. Otherwise, if it were someone else, they wouldn't be able to break this deadlock. Qin Feiyang smiled and stood up. I've let him laugh for so long. It's time for him to cry. Let's go. After this period of recuperation, the poison in his body had been completely removed and his injuries were healed. Whoosh! The three of them immediately rose into the air and flew toward Qinghai City. At the city gate, more than a dozen guards were on guard. Qin Feiyang and the other two didn't hide and directly landed in front of the city gate. It's them. A group of guards immediately drew their swords and surrounded the three of them. Qin Feiyang said lightly, You don't have to do anything. Let's go. The leading guard sneered. That's for the best. Let's go. The three of them looked at each other and smiled, then entered the city openly. The group of guards followed closely behind. A moment later, the three of them arrived in front of a mansion. The mansion was grand and imposing. It was brightly lit and the guards stood upright. Their eyes were extremely spirited. When they saw Qin Feiyang and the other two, their eyes burst out with a cold light. Go in. One of the guards shouted. The three of them entered the mansion. A guard at the gate of the mansion grabbed the leading guard and asked in a low voice, Captain, how did you catch them? The leading guard looked at the back of Qin Feiyang and the other two with a strange expression and whispered, They delivered themselves to us. Delivered themselves to us? The guards at the gate were stunned. They had already escaped, and yet they took the initiative to come back to die. Was there something wrong with their heads? In a certain courtyard in the mansion, Shin Fei-yun sat on a chair. His eyes were gloomy. In front of him, an old man in black was kneeling. The old man's eyes were full of self-blame and guilt. Suddenly, Shin Fei-yun, who was silent, looked at the old man in black and asked, "Old Nya, how do I usually treat you?" The old man in black said, "Lord is very good to this old servant, like a relative." "You still know? Then why did you let him run out when I told you to watch long? More importantly, you didn't report to me immediately. Tell me, what are your intentions?" Shin Fei-yun shouted. The old man in black's eyes trembled and hurriedly said, "Lord, this old servant swears that he is absolutely loyal to Lord." Shin Fei-yun looked deeply at the old man in black and sighed. "Old Nya, if you had told me earlier, Longer wouldn't have died." "I'm sorry, Lord." At first, this old servant thought that young master was only going to find trouble with young master Hao and the others. He wouldn't do anything out of line, so I didn't report to you. Who would have thought that young master would be so willful and poison them? Lord, this is this old servant's fault. Please punish me. The old man in black said guiltily. "Pa!" Shin Fei-yun slapped the armrest of the chair and said angrily, "You also think that Longer poisoned them first?" This, the old man in black, didn't know how to answer for a moment. Although Longer is a playboy, I don't believe that he doesn't even have a sense of propriety. This must be an excuse made up by young master Hao and the others to kill them. Shin Fei-yun snorted coldly. "Don't." At this moment, there was a rush of knocking on the door. Shin Fei-yun raised his eyebrows and looked at the old man in black. "Go open the door." The old man in black got up and walked to the door. When he opened the door, he saw a guard standing outside. "What's the matter?" The old man in black frowned. The guard said breathlessly, "Master Nya, City Lord, we've caught them." Shin Fei-yun suddenly quivered and immediately got up. He grabbed the guard's clothes and asked, "Where is it?" "The meeting hall." The guard said, "Little bastard, I'll kill you." Shin Fei-yun growled and disappeared into the night sky with a murderous aura. "Lord, don't be rash." Chapter 991. The Great Assembly Hall was located in the center of the city, Lord's mansion. It was more than 10 meters tall, and there were obvious traces of weathering on the surface. At this moment, there were over 100 guards around the hall, and their cultivations were all between 5-star and 9-star worsect. Everyone's face was filled with vigilance. "Greetings, City Lord." As soon as Shin Fei-yun arrived, the guards all bowed and saluted. "All of you be more spirited," Shin Fei-yun said coldly and strode into the great assembly hall. Inside the hall, the lights were as bright as day. Qin Fei-yong and the other two sat on a chair with different expressions. Qin Fei-yong was expressionless. No one knew what he was thinking. Young master Hao crossed his legs in a frivolous manner. Wang Yu lowered her head, her eyes constantly flickering. But if one observed carefully, they would notice that she would glance at Qin Fei-yong from time to time. The three of them did not have much of a reaction to Shin Fei-yun's arrival. Seeing this scene, the killing intent in Shin Fei-yun's heart became even stronger. "Greetings, Lord." The leading guard bowed to Shin Fei-yun, then swept his gaze towards Qin Fei-yong and the other two and shouted, "Didn't you see that the city lord is here? Quickly get up and count out to him." "Does he have the qualifications?" The corner of young master Hao's mouth curled up, full of disdain. "How dare you?" The leading guard was furious and reached out to grab young master Hao. "Dare to touch this young master." Young master Hao suddenly turned his head and stared at the guard, his eyes incomparably sharp. The leading guard's pupils constricted, and an indescribable sense of fear emerged in his heart. "He doesn't dare, I dare." Shin Fei-yun's gaze turned cold, and he raised his hand to grab young Master Hao's head. "My lord, stop!" At this time, the old man in black hurried over and grabbed Shen Feiyun's wrist. "What are you trying to do, rebel?" Shen Feiyun shouted. "My lord, calm down!" The old man in black anxiously shouted, then looked at the guards and said, "All of you, go out and close the door." "Yes, sir." The group of guards immediately turned around and ran out, closing the door of the hall tightly. In this way, inside the hall, only Qin Feiyang's group of 3 and Shen Feiyun's group were left. The black-clothed old man looked at Shen Feiyun and pleaded, "My lord, can this old servant ask a few questions first?" Shen Feiyun clenched his fist and shook off the black-robed old man. He said coldly, "I will only give you 100 breaths of time." The black-clothed old man let out a long sigh. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the other 2 and asked, "Can you tell me the truth? Did young master poison you?" Young Master Hao curled his lips and said, "If he didn't poison us, why would we kill him?" "Where's the witness? Who saw it?" Shen Feiyun angrily shouted. "Alas!" Wang Yuer sighed deeply and said regretfully, "Big brother Shin, I really didn't expect that after so many years, you would become like this today." Shen Feiyun said angrily, "Isn't this all thanks to Chief Pagoda Master and Gongsun Bei? You still haven't reflected on your actions, and you're still blaming them. You're really hopeless." There was a trace of anger in Wang Yuer's tone. "This is their fault to begin with." Shen Feiyun roared, as if he was recalling the past. His eyes were red, and he was hysterical. Wang Yuer said, "Ask yourself, is it really their fault?" Shen Feiyun's expression was uncertain. After a moment, he waved his hand impatiently and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Since you say that Long poisoned you first, then find the witness for me. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving the city, Lord's mansion today." "Unreasonable. You want evidence, right?" Wang Yuer snorted coldly and looked at Qin Feiyang. "Give it to him." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the image crystal appeared. Immediately after, an image appeared in the void of the great council hall. It's actually him behind the scenes, watching the entire conversation between Fu Xiong and Fu Anshan. The black-clothed old man's eyes gradually darkened. Shen Feiyun was the same. His hands clenched tightly, making cracking sounds. That gloomy gaze was as if he wanted to eat someone. "Damn bastard! I, Shen Feiyun, will not rest until you die." The image ended. Shen Feiyun roared and directly blasted the door of the hall, turning into a stream of light, breaking through the air like lightning. Looking at Shen Feiyun's back, the black-clothed old man couldn't help but sigh. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang and the other 2 and said, "It shouldn't be easy for the 3 of you to get this image." "It's okay," young Master Hao said lightly. "Thank you 3. The black-clothed old man bowed. "Thank us for what?" Young Master Hao was suspicious. "If you don't have this evidence, the Lord will definitely kill you. At that time, the Chief Pagoda Master will be alerted, and Lord's life will be in danger." "So, the 3 of you have saved Lord's life." The black-clothed old man sighed. "You're quite loyal," young Master Hao said in surprise. "Lord has done me a favor. It's only right for me to repay him. Let's not talk about it anymore. The 3 of you wait for a moment. I'll go take a look." After saying that, the black-clothed old man turned around and rushed out of the hall. He shouted to the guards guarding the door, "The 3 inside are the city, Lord's distinguished guests. Treat them well." Before his voice died away, the black-clothed old man rushed to the sky and chased after Shen Feiyun. Distinguished guests? The group of guards was dumbfounded. What was going on? Weren't they mortal enemies before? How did they become distinguished guests in the blink of an eye? What about us? In the hall, young Master Hao looked at Qin Feiyang and Wang Yuer. "There's a good show going on. Of course, we have to go and take a look. Qin Feiyang chuckled, got up, and walked away. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. Wang Yuer and young master Hao looked at each other. A cold light flashed in their eyes at the same time. They also got up and quickly followed. Fu Xiong, get out here. All of a sudden, a roar resounded through the night sky, alarming countless people. Is this the city lord's voice? What happened? Why is he so angry? People were surprised. At the same time, Fu Xiong, who was lying on the bed and reading ancient books, also sat up, his eyes full of surprise. Boom! Before he could react, another terrifying emperor's aura erupted outside. Fu Xiong immediately felt a deep sense of uneasiness in his heart. Without hesitation, he quickly got up and rushed out of a window. Boom! Crack! Just as he left, a dazzling battle chi blasted into the trading pavilion, accompanied by an earth-shattering sound. The entire building collapsed with a loud crash. Billowing dust and smoke rose into the sky, covering the waning moon. This, standing in the void, Fu Xiong was completely dumbfounded when he saw this scene. Suddenly, he looked up and saw Shen Feiyun standing high in the sky, exuding a monstrous aura. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Fu Xiong shouted angrily. Crazy? Yes, not only am I crazy, but I'm also going to kill you today. Die. Shen Feiyun roared and swooped down toward Fu Xiong with surging killing intent. What the hell are you doing? Fu Xiong's expression changed, and he hurriedly flew away. At the same time, he roared without looking back. The two of them, one in front and one behind, quickly rushed out of the city and entered the mountains outside the city. Whoosh! At this moment, the old man in black, Qin Feiyang, and the other two flew into the sky one after another, looking at Fu Xiong and Shen Feiyun from afar. Wang Yuer frowned, looked at the old man in black, and asked, How's Fu Xiong's strength? Very strong, but compared to Sir, he's still far from being strong. The old man in black smiled confidently. That's good, Wang Yuer whispered. To be honest, she still had some sympathy for Shen Feiyun because, when she was young, Shen Feiyun took care of her like an elder brother. Whoosh! The four of them moved and chased after him. Above a giant mountain, Fu Xiong paused, turned to look at Shen Feiyun, and said angrily, Is there something wrong with your brain? Why did you attack me for no reason? How dare you say it's for no reason? I've always minded my own business with you, but you actually killed my son. Do you really think that I, Shen Feiyun, have become a good-for-nothing now? Shen Feiyun roared, his hair flying in anger. What? Fu Xiong's eyes trembled. Did Shen Feiyun already know? Impossible. Those who deserved to die were all dead. Shen Feiyun had no way to know. Thinking of this, Fu Xiong calmed down a little and said angrily, The one who killed your son is Wang Su's granddaughter. Why are you looking for me? It's true that Wang Yuer killed him, but you're the source of all this. Don't try to quibble anymore. Today, if I don't chop you into pieces, I, Shen Feiyun, am not a human. Boom! Shen Feiyun's body shook, and his battle chi surged out like a tide, turning into a huge wave that covered the sky and rushed toward Fu Xiong. That murderous intent was enough to make one tremble in fear. Damn it, how did I get exposed? Fu Xiong's mind was in a mess at this moment. Everything he had planned could be said to be flawless, and the facts also proved that there were indeed no flaws. Otherwise, Shen Feiyun would not kill young Master Hao and the other two in anger during the day. But how did Shen Feiyun suddenly find out? There was no time to think about it, because the battle chi had already rushed in front of him. He quickly raised both hands, and his battle chi surged, colliding with Shen Feiyun's battle chi. Puff! Sure enough, as the black-clothed old man said, Fu Xiong's strength was completely inferior to Shen Feiyun's. He directly spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out like a meteorite, crashing into a huge mountain behind. The huge mountain was more than 10,000 feet tall and shattered on the spot. In just one round, Fu Xiong suffered a fatal injury. Although my son is useless, he's not someone you can use. At this moment, Shen Feiyun was a living god of death, and no one could stop him. The battle qi all over his body was like a waterfall, constantly surging into the sky, turning the night into day. Boom! In the blink of an eye, a huge hand appeared out of nowhere, covering the sky and the moon, exuding a world-destroying aura, destroying everything in its path. Go and be buried with my son. Next, Shen Feiyun roared into the sky, and the huge hand with an ear-piercing sound of wind and thunder fell from the sky, slapping the ground below. Boom! The ground instantly cracked, and ravines appeared everywhere. Huge mountains collapsed crazily, and a thunderous sound shook the heavens. This is Shen Feiyun's strength. In the distant void, Qin Feiyang's pupils constricted, unable to conceal his fear. Wang Yu'er said, if Shen Feiyun hadn't been so dispirited all these years, his current strength would be far more than this. Chapter 992. Is it far more than that? Qin Feiyang murmured and did not refute, because that was the truth. With Shen Feiyun's talent, if he was willing to cultivate seriously these years, even if he did not obtain the inheritance, his current strength would not be inferior to Gongsun Bei. Unfortunately, he had chosen a path of desolation. The wind howled in heaven, and earth shook. Shen Feiyun stood proudly in the void like a fiend god, his aura soaring to the sky. Below, the ground was cracked and dilapidated, filled with a tragic aura. Fu Xiong was buried underground, his life or death unknown. Is he dead? Young master, how mumbled. The old man in black said confidently, needless to say, he's definitely dead. Boom! However, before he finished, a destructive aura rushed out from the ground like a volcanic eruption. For a moment, the ground trembled and dust flew. Whoosh! Following that, a bloody figure rushed out from the soil, his body covered in wounds, some of them so deep that bones could be seen. It was Fu Xiong, not dead. The old man in black raised his eyebrows in surprise. You're really lucky. But it's good. If you die like this, it'll be too easy for you. Shen Feiyun's black hair danced in the wind like a madman. He took a step forward, the battle qi under his feet surging as he stepped on Fu Xiong's head. Fu Xiong's expression changed, and he hurriedly turned to flee. At the same time, he shouted anxiously, You said I harmed your son. Take out the evidence. Shen Feiyun did not answer and chased crazily. The murderous intent in his eyes made Fu Xiong despair. Shen Feiyun, don't go too far. Fu Xiong roared in horror. He wanted to buy some time and find a chance to escape, but he did not expect Shen Feiyun to ignore him. You're the one who's going too far. Shen Feiyun's gaze was extremely dark, and his speed was faster than Fu Xiong's. The distance between them was closing bit by bit. What should I do? Fu Xiong was flustered and regretful. If he had known, he would not have instigated young master long. Seeing Shen Feiyun approaching step by step, Fu Xiong was so anxious that he was about to go crazy. Suddenly, he stopped and turned to look at Shen Feiyun, his eyes flashing with madness. I advise you not to force me. Even a rabbit will bite when cornered. Who do you think you are? So what if I force you? Shen Feiyun smiled coldly and arrogantly. His footsteps did not slow down at all. Fu Xiong's eyes darkened as he said, Even if I die, shouldn't you at least let me know the reason before I die? He still hadn't given up and wanted to fight for a chance to escape. However, Shen Feiyun still did not give him the chance to do so. Carrying surging battle qi, he furiously charged forward. Bastard, since you won't let me go, then we'll die together today. Fu Xiong was in complete despair and gave up struggling. With a furious roar, he did not retreat. but instead charged toward Shen Feiyun. You overestimate yourself. Shen Feiyun sneered. Really? Fu Xiong smiled sinisterly, and a destructive aura suddenly rushed out of his body. This aura made Shen Feiyun feel horrified. What do you want to do? Shen Feiyun was bewildered. Do what? Of course, I'll drag you down to hell with me. Speaking of which, it's a worthy death for me to have a peerless genius like you die with me. Be destroyed. Haha, Fu Xiong laughed maniacally. Rumble. Following that 7-foot-tall body suddenly exploded in the void. Immediately, a world-destroying wave of air surged out in all directions like a tidal wave. Damn it. He actually self-destructed his body. Shen Feiyun's expression changed drastically, and he retreated without hesitation. But it was too late. That wave of air arrived in an instant and drowned him. Ah, a blood-curdling scream resounded through the heavens and earth. Lord! Seeing this scene, the old man in black immediately bared his teeth and rushed toward Shen Feiyun crazily. But before he could get close, he was sent flying by the wave of air. That old body was instantly torn into pieces, and blood splattered across the sky. Run! Qin Feiyang's pupils constricted as he shouted at young master Hao and Wang Yuer. Without a doubt, Fu Xiong was definitely a war king. The destructive power of a war king's self-destruction was not something they could withstand. That old man in black was the best example. In just an instant, he was killed instantly. Seeing the death of the old man in black, Wang Yuer was so scared that her face turned pale. The moment Qin Feiyang spoke, she immediately swept up Qin Feiyang and Wang Yuer, turned around and fled for her life. After running for a long time, the three of them finally felt that the danger behind them had disappeared. They stopped at the peak of a giant mountain that was about 10,000 feet tall. When they turned around, their faces turned pale with fright. They saw that the land in front of them had been destroyed. Not a single blade of grass was left, as if it was a land of death. That wave of air had not dissipated yet. In the void and on the ground, nothing could stop them from killing. That was close. Young master Hao patted his chest with lingering fear. If they had been a step later, they would have followed in the footsteps of that old man in black. Yeah, the power of a war king's self-destruction is too terrifying. Wang Yuer's pretty face was also pale. This was the first time they had seen such a scene in their lives, and they finally understood how cruel the outside world was. As for Qin Feiyang, he was not that surprised, because he had already seen the scene of the war king's self-destruction. Back then in the 9 regions, the 2 divine envoys from the main tower were forced by the Mu family's great ancestor and second ancestor to self-destruct in despair. So it was no longer surprising. However, he felt quite sorry for the sacrifice of the old man in black. Knowing that he was going to die, he still rushed forward without hesitation. Such a loyal person was really rare. It was a pity that he died. After young master Hao recovered, he looked into the depths of the mountain range and frowned. Is this Shen Feiyun dead? Shen Feiyun's strength is at most 1 or 2 small realms higher than Fu Xiong, and the power of self-destruction is stronger than a perfect battle art, so he should have no hope of survival. Qin Feiyang said. What a pity. Wang Yuer sighed. Qin Feiyang said lightly, a pitiful person must have something to hate. There's no need to be so sad. Let's go. You're so heartless. Wang Yuer raised her eyebrows. Heartless? Don't be naive. The outside world is a world where the strong preys on the weak. People like you who grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth will not understand. Qin Feiyang said lightly. His expression was indeed a little cold. But it was not because he was really heartless, but because he was used to this kind of thing, and it was difficult for him to sympathize. Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, young master Hao and Wang Yuer looked at each other and couldn't help but feel a little fear in their hearts. No, The fear of Qin Feiyang was the fear of the ruthlessness of the world. Boom! However, just as the three of them were about to go back the way they came, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from the mountain stream below. Following closely, a bright battle chi, carrying an astonishing killing intent, rushed toward the three of them like lightning. There's someone else. Qin Feiyang and the other two were shocked and hurriedly rushed into the sky and fled for their lives, because the aura that erupted from the mountain stream also carried a shocking emperor's aura. It was enough to explain. The person lurking in the mountain stream was a war emperor, but no matter how Qin Feiyang and the other two fled, the battle chi always followed behind them. How could this be? I didn't sense any aura locking onto me. Young Master Hao was surprised. Wang Yuer was also bewildered. Usually, in this kind of situation, only when the opponent's aura locked onto them would they be chased by the battle chi. Looking at Qin Feiyang again, at this moment, as he fled, he scanned the mountain stream with a gloomy face. Suddenly, he looked at young Master Hao and Wang Yuer and said in a deep voice, "I've been locked onto by a wisp of aura." What? Their expressions changed. Qin Feiyang said, "The aura only locked onto me, not you. It seems that this person's target is me. Hurry up and get away from me." How can this do? Young Master Hao was anxious. The person lurking in the mountain stream was a war emperor, and Qin Feiyang was only a one-star war saint. The difference between them was like heaven and earth. If they were hit by the battle chi, they would definitely die. Cut the crap, hurry up. Qin Feiyang shouted impatiently. Let's go. Wang Yuer took a deep look at Qin Feiyang, grabbed young Master Hao, and dashed in another direction. As expected, the battle chi only followed Qin Feiyang and did not chase after Wang Yuer and young Master Hao. Who could it be? Qin Feiyang scanned the mountains and rivers below, his eyes extremely gloomy. No matter who you are, you can dream on if you want to kill me. Suddenly, a cold smile flashed across his eyes. He suddenly dived down and rushed into the forest below. His speed was as fast as lightning. Almost in the blink of an eye, he entered the forest. The battle chi also blasted into the forest. With a loud bang, the forest was razed to the ground on the spot. Several towering mountains nearby were also shattered in an instant. Dust and smoke covered the sky. Brother Mu, young Master Hao shouted. There was an unresolvable sadness between his eyebrows. Wang Yuer's face also turned pale. Was there any way to survive after being hit by the battle chi of a war emperor? Time passed breath by breath. The world fell into a dead silence. After not sensing Qin Feiyang's aura for a long time, young Master Hao's eyes surged with strong killing intent. He shouted, "Who is it? Get out here." Wang Yuer clutched her chest and remained silent. However, her heart could not help but ache faintly. Usually when she saw Qin Feiyang, she was very disgusted. However, now that she saw Qin Feiyang die in front of her, she felt inexplicably sad. In the sky, a dark cloud surged from afar and covered the waning moon. The earth immediately fell into endless darkness. At this moment, a black figure suddenly appeared on a mountain ridge not far away. He raised his head and looked at young Master Hao and young Master Hao. Then, he looked in the direction of Qin Feiyang. His eyes flickered with a cold light. "Don't blame me. This is the leader's order." After a while, the black figure muttered and turned to leave. However, just as he turned around, he suddenly turned back and looked in the direction of Qin Feiyang again. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Whoosh! The next moment, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, a fiery red figure suddenly rushed out of the dust and smoke. Who else could it be other than Qin Feiyang? At this moment, not only was there no injury on his body, but even a strand of hair was not missing. He was full of vitality and energy. How is this possible? The black figure rubbed his eyes in disbelief. When he looked again, he was instantly stunned. Chapter 993. Not dead. At the same time, young Master Hao and Wang Yu also looked at Qin Feiyang in disbelief. Then, young Master Hao's face was filled with ecstasy. He hurriedly rushed to Qin Feiyang, looked up and down at Qin Feiyang and said, "Give me a slap to see if I'm dreaming." Idiot. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes, but his heart was warm. However, Wang Yu did not stand on ceremony and slapped young Master Hao's face. "You really hit me." Young Master Hao immediately covered his face and glared at Wang Yu, grimacing in pain. "If you know the pain, then you're not dreaming," Wang Yu said, and then looked at Qin Feiyang, her eyes full of surprise. "Brother, how did you do it?" young Master Hao asked. Qin Feiyang glanced at him and did not explain. He lowered his head and scanned the mountains below again, looking for the black shadow. In fact, it was very simple. The moment he entered the forest, he hid in the castle, so the battle chi did not hit him at all. However, he could not tell young Master Hao and Wang Yu about the castle. "Who is it?" Wang Yu was also looking for the black shadow. The black shadow, standing on the mountain ridge, finally came back to his senses, and his eyes burst with strong killing intent. "If you're not dead, then I'll kill you again," he muttered and was about to attack, but at this moment an astonishing emperor's might suddenly erupted from the depths of the mountain range. The black shadow's pupils shrank, and he immediately turned around and merged into the dark forest without looking back. At the same time, Qin Feiyang and the other two also looked into the depths of the mountain range, their eyes full of surprise. They were very familiar with this emperor's might. It was Shen Feiyun's. Was Shen Feiyun not dead? Boom! Suddenly, they sensed that Shen Feiyun's emperor's might was soaring crazily. No way! Not only did he not die, but he also broke through. The three of them looked at each other. Sure enough, when Shen Feiyun appeared in their sight again, the aura exuding from his body was a level stronger than before. However, the injuries on his body were very serious. Not only was he missing an arm, but his body was also riddled with wounds, as if he was a bloody man. Wang Yu went up to him and said with a smile, "One who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune in the future. Big brother Shin, congratulations." Shen Feiyun stopped in midair and glanced at Wang Yu, before looking at Qin Feiyang and young Master Hao. His expression was extremely desolate. Sighing inwardly, Wang Yu consoled, "Big brother Shin, the dead cannot be brought back to life. Please restrain your grief." Shen Feiyun didn't answer. He raised his head and looked at the dark sky. He seemed to have aged several decades. After a long time, he withdrew his gaze and said, "I believe you all know what I did in Divine City back then." Qin Feiyang and the other two nodded. "Actually, I also understand that this matter is my fault. I can't blame Chief Pagoda Master and Gong Sun Bei, but I just can't get over it. I didn't know how to face it either, so all these years I drank day and night without stopping, because only when I was drunk could I forget those things. But it was also because of this that I forgot my responsibility as a father. Ever since Long was born, I didn't take good care of him. After a long time, he began to rebel. Even when I discovered this, I didn't restrain him, which led to today's disaster. Actually, it's all my fault. I don't deserve to be his father at all." Shen Feiyun blamed himself in pain. Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other and chose to remain silent. A moment later, Shen Feiyun looked up at the three of them and smiled. "But I also have to thank you." The three of them were puzzled. Shen Feiyun said, "Because of your arrival and also because of Long death, I finally woke up." Wang Yu said, "Then what do you plan to do next?" "I want to return to Divine City and make up for my past mistakes. I want to let the world know that I, Shen Feiyun, am back." Shen Feiyun looked at the night sky and muttered, his body exuding an invisible, domineering aura. Wang Yu smiled in relief. She could already predict that the divine city would soon be stirred up by Shen Feiyun's return. Shen Feiyun suddenly thought of something and looked at the three of them. Just now, I sensed an emperor's aura here. What's going on? Young Master Hao's eyes turned cold as he said in a deep voice, "Someone wants to assassinate Brother Mu." Shen Feiyun looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Did you offend someone?" "I've offended too many people. It's really hard to determine which clown is causing trouble in the dark." Qin Feiyang shrugged and said helplessly. However, the three of them did not notice that there was a glimmer of light in the depths of his eyes. "Clown?" Shen Feiyun's face twitched. The other party was a dignified combat emperor, but he was called a clown. This young man was too unique. "Wait for me." Shen Feiyun closed his eyes and carefully sensed. A moment later, he opened his eyes and said, "Within 100 miles, other than the aura of ferocious beasts, I didn't sense anyone else's aura. They should have already left." Young Master Hao and Wang Yu both heaved a sigh of relief. Shen Feiyun said, "All right, I still have to go and bury Long. You guys be careful." "Okay." The three of them nodded. After Shen Feiyun opened the portal and left, young Master Hao immediately looked at Qin Feiyang and frowned. "Brother, why do I suddenly feel that I can't see through you?" Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat and he asked in confusion, "What do you mean?" Not only can you refine a magical pill like the Juku Yellow Dragon pill, but you can also escape safely from the assassination of a combat emperor. This is not something an ordinary person can do. Young Master Hao said. Cough, cough. Hearing young Master Hao mention the Juku Yellow Dragon pill, Qin Feiyang hurriedly coughed to remind him. However, young Master Hao only realized later that he had let it slip after saying it. Without a doubt, Wang Yu heard it. "What is it?" "You refined the Juku Yellow Dragon pill." She stared at Qin Feiyang in surprise. "It's all your fault for talking too much." Qin Feiyang glared at young Master Hao and was extremely annoyed. Young Master Hao turned his head and looked away guiltily, as if he didn't know him. "Don't try to divert my attention. Tell me, did you refine it or not?" Wang Yu asked. "So what if I refined it?" Qin Feiyang glanced at her and said lightly, "Oh my God." Wang Yu immediately seemed to have discovered a new world and her beautiful eyes shone. Qin Feiyang looked at her eyes and felt uncomfortable all over. Suddenly, Wang Yu smiled and patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder meaningfully. She said with a smile, "You hit it well. Not bad, not bad." After saying that, she flew in the direction of Qinghai City. "Sister, wait for me." Young Master Hao hurriedly chased after her. He was afraid that Qin Feiyang would continue to blame him. Qin Feiyang looked at Wang Yu's back and frowned. For some reason, when he saw the smile on Wang Yu's face, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. Suddenly, his eyes flashed and he said loudly to the two of them, "I have something to do and have to leave for a while. Let's meet at the city gate later." "You have something to do?" Wang Yu and Qin Feiyang were stunned. They quickly stopped in the void and turned to ask Qin Feiyang. However, when they turned around, they discovered that there was no trace of Qin Feiyang. Where is he? How did he disappear in the blink of an eye? As they scanned the empty space, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. In the castle, Qin Feiyang stood in the center of the castle with his head lowered and his eyes flickering. Lu Hong had also woken up from her cultivation and was thinking about something. Suddenly, Lu Hong's eyes lit up. She looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "The person who attacked you is actually very easy to guess." "Really?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked up at Lu Hong with interest and said with a faint smile, "Tell me about it." "You have indeed offended a lot of people in the Forgotten Continent, but the people you have offended with your identity of Ancestor Mu can be counted on one hand. Let me think. It seems that other than Fu Anshan, the Scorpion tribe, there is only the Qilin tribe." And Fu Anshan is definitely impossible, because if it was him, he wouldn't just watch Fu Xiong being killed by Xin Feiyun. The Scorpion tribe is even more impossible, because the people of the Scorpion tribe are all dead. Then only the Qilin tribe is left. Lu Hong smiled. This little girl is really getting smarter and smarter. Qin Feiyang muttered. What Lu Hong said was basically the same as what he thought. After thinking about it, Qin Feiyang asked, Then, is it possible that it's someone from the Mu family? Are you testing me on purpose? Of course, it's impossible. If it was really them, they would have already made a move on you when they got the scorpion flame. Lu Hong frowned her beautiful eyebrows, expressing her dissatisfaction. Qin Feiyang laughed. Not bad. Next time when I let you go out alone, I can rest assured. I can already take care of myself, okay? Lu Hong pouted her red lips, looking quite charming. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed, then turned around and took out the image crystal. Wu Yang's shadow quickly condensed. Although they were in the castle, because Qin Feiyang deliberately changed the direction, Wu Yang could only see one side of the castle wall. Qin Feiyang didn't waste time and directly said, Immediately go and investigate whether or not your tribe has people who left today. Wu Yang's expression was confused. Why do you want to investigate this? Moreover, there are more than 1 million people in my tribe. Who knows how many people go out and come back and go out. How do you want to investigate? There's no need to investigate the others. Just investigate those above the combat emperor level. As for the reason, I'll tell you later. Qin Feiyang said, If it's just investigating those above the combat emperor level, then it's much simpler. Give me a day. After I've finished investigating, I'll send you a message. Wu Yang said. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded, then turned off the image crystal and sent a message to Yan Wei. After the shadow appeared, Yan Wei immediately asked, Was the journey smooth? There were some accidents, but it's been resolved. Qin Feiyang smiled, then his face became serious and said, There's something, help me pay more attention to it. Speak, Yan Wei said. Qin Feiyang said, I'm worried that Fu Anshan might harm Li He, so pay more attention in the future. Harm Li He, would he dare? Yan Wei was surprised. There's nothing that some people don't dare to do after losing their minds. Qin Feiyang sneered. Yan Wei's pupils contracted, and he nodded. Okay, I'll pay more attention. Then I'll leave it to you. Chapter 994. In fact, he could directly open the portal and go to the city gate to meet Mr. Hao and Mr. Wang. He did that because he wanted to see if he could lure the Black Shadow out. But it ended in disappointment. The Black Shadow didn't appear again until he arrived above the city gate. In front of the city gate, Mr. Hao and Wang Yu stood side by side. Mr. Hao's black hair was fluttering in the wind. Wang Yu was beautiful. Her clothes were fluttering, and her hair was dancing in the wind. The two of them were like a beautiful scenery in the dark night. Swish! Qin Feiyang flashed and landed in front of them. Greetings, Mr. Hao. The guards who were guarding the city immediately bowed and saluted. Their expressions were also extremely respectful. Obviously, Xin Feiyun had already greeted them. Qin Feiyang nodded, looked at Mr. Hao and Mr. Wang, and asked, Did the person who attacked me appear again? Mr. Hao shook his head. Qin Feiyang sighed. It seems that we have to be extra careful on the way. Wang Yu said, It's you who should be careful, not us. Don't confuse us. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said angrily, Who said not long ago that we are a team and should work together? Did someone say that? Wang Yu pretended to be confused, looked at Mr. Hao and asked, Did you say that? Mr. Hao's face darkened, and he said, You can quarrel if you want, but don't drag me into it. Right now, I feel like a third will sandwiched between the two of you. What do you mean? A trace of anger rose in Wang Yu's eyes. See for yourself. Mr. Hao turned his head away, looking very unhappy. Qin Feiyong rubbed his forehead with a helpless expression on his face. With this woman around, it seemed that he would not be able to have a quiet time on the way. Whoosh! Taking a deep breath, Qin Feiyong looked at the two of them and said, "Cut the crap. Shall we go directly to Qinghai or rest in the city for a night?" Mr. Hao thought for a while and said secretly, "I think it's better to go during the day. After all, we don't know where the person who attacked you is hiding. If we rush to Qinghai at night, I'm afraid that we may be attacked by him on the way." "That makes sense." Qin Feiyong nodded and smiled. "Then let's rest in Azure Sea City for the night and depart tomorrow morning. Let's go." The two of them immediately walked into the city. Sneak attack! Behind him, Wang Yuer glanced at the dim night sky. With a cold light flashing in her eyes, she turned around and followed him slowly. The night passed in silence. The next day, early morning, the sun slowly rose from the horizon and spread its rays over the earth, dispelling the lingering chill of the night. Qin Feiyong and the other two left Azure Sea City early and flew towards Azure Sea. Along the way, there were mountains and rivers as far as the eye could see. The ferocious beasts were densely packed, and their cultivations were not weak. They would encounter a few battle saint-level vicious beasts every now and then, but Qin Feiyong and the other two were not weak either. Wang Yuer was a 9-star battle saint. These ferocious beasts naturally posed no threat to them, and the three of them arrived at the blue sea without a hitch. The coastline stretched as far as the eye could see. At this moment, there were many people gathered on the beach. There were old and young, strong and weak. They were all adventurers in Qinghai. Some of them sat cross-legged on the ground and closed their eyes to rest. Some of them gathered in 2s and 3s to discuss the various secrets of Qinghai. When Qin Feiyong looked at the surface of the sea, a hint of astonishment immediately appeared on his face. The blue sea was sparkling and extremely calm. It was completely different from what he had imagined. The Azure Sea he had imagined was full of raging winds and turbulent waves. But now, the Azure Sea in front of him was so quiet and peaceful. He could not feel any danger at all. This is just the outer sea. There is no danger here. The real danger is in the inner sea. And there are rumors that the end of the inner sea is connected to the endless sea. As if seeing Qin Feiyong's doubts, Wang Yuer explained in a somewhat solemn tone. The endless sea. Qin Feiyong's heart skipped a beat. It was not the first time he had heard of the endless sea. Young Master Hao asked curiously, "Sister, is the endless sea really as terrible as the rumors say?" "I've never been there, so I don't know. But those rumors should not be groundless," Wang Yuer said. Young Master Hao looked at the vast sea with a yearning face and said, "I really want to see it if I have the chance." "Hey, I won't stop you if you want to go, as long as you're not afraid of death." Wang Yuer smirked. "Humph." Young Master Hao raised his middle finger with a disdainful face. "Do you know what you're thinking now? Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers." Wang Yuer rolled her eyes at him, then looked at the end of the sea and said, "It's still early. Let's try to enter the inner sea before dark. Let's go." Whoosh! The three of them immediately turned into a stream of light and flew toward the sea. "Someone's coming?" The people gathered at the seaside all sensed the aura of Qin Feiyong and the other two, and they all looked up at the three of them. Aren't they the three people who killed young Master Long yesterday? They actually came to Qinghai? Qinghai City was not far from here, and the people here were basically people near Qinghai City, so they had already received the news not long after the incident yesterday. Similarly, the news of Fu Xiong's death had also spread. However, as for why Fu Xiong had died, no one had figured it out yet, because Shan Feiyun did not deliberately explain the reason to the public. Maybe he didn't want to explain, or maybe it was because he couldn't get over this hurdle in his heart. After all, no matter what, young Master Long did die in the hands of these three people. It was also because of Shen Feiyun's silence that the people here found it difficult to make a decision. On one hand, they wanted to take down Qin Feiyang and the other two, and bring them to the city lord's mansion to receive the reward. But on the other hand, they received another piece of news last night. Some guards of the city lord's mansion privately told others that for some reason, these three people suddenly became the city lord's distinguished guests. This made them very confused. What in the world had happened here? Swoosh! Just as Qin Feiyang and the other two were flying over the beach, an old man with white hair and a white beard suddenly opened his eyes and sized up Qin Feiyang and the other two. He flew up and stood in front of the three. The old man's cultivation was at the level of a 2-star battle saint. He stroked his white beard and looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two, and asked with a smile, "My three little friends, where are you going?" His expression looked very friendly. Qin Feiyang and the other two stopped in the void. "Hello, elder." Wang Yuer bowed politely and then replied, "The three of us are going to the Blue Sea." "The Blue Sea? My three little friends, the Blue Sea is not a good place. You have such high cultivation at such a young age, and I believe that your talents are not bad. So, it's better not to go there lest you lose your life." The white-haired old man kindly advised them. Wang Yuer smiled and said, "Thank you for your concern, elder. We have something to do and have to go there. In that case, I won't persuade you anymore. You have to be careful." The white-haired old man chuckled and returned to the beach, continuing to rest with his eyes closed. Young Master Hao glanced at the white-haired old man and then looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "The outside world is not as cruel as you said. There are more good people." "Good people?" Qin Feiyang looked at the white-haired old man, and an imperceptible light flashed in his eyes. He murmured, "Maybe." Young Master Hao did not notice this slight abnormality. He looked at Wang Yuer and said, "Sister, they have been exploring here all year round. Maybe they know the location of the 7th grade alchemy fire. Why don't we ask them?" "That's right." Wang Yuer's eyes lit up and she urged, "Go and ask." Young Master Hao was about to go down, but at this moment Qin Feiyang pulled him back and said with a smile, "Let me go." "Isn't it the same if you go and I go?" Young Master Hao looked at him in confusion. Qin Feiyang did not explain further. He landed in front of the white-haired old man, cupped his hands, and said with a smile, "May I know your name, elder?" The white-haired old man opened his eyes and chuckled. "I'm just a nobody, not worth mentioning. What's the matter, my little friend?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and said with a smile, "Nothing. I just want to ask you, elder, has anything big happened in the Blue Sea recently?" "Big things?" The white-haired old man was stunned. He lowered his head and muttered to himself. Qin Feiyang was not in a hurry. He carefully paid attention to the white-haired old man's expression. At the same time, he was also paying attention to the people around the white-haired old man. Gradually, he found out, although these people were cultivating with their eyes closed, there was a trace of vigilance between their brows, as if they were guarding against something. Moreover, whether it was their temperament or appearance, they were very ordinary, and their cultivation was not very good. They were basically between the 5-star and 9-star battle masters. But Qin Feiyang felt that this group of people and the others on the beach had an atmosphere that was out of place. Something's wrong. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. When he looked at the white-haired old man before, he felt that something was wrong. This was not intuition. It was experience. All these years he had been fighting and scheming with others. Even he himself could not remember how many life and death tribulations he had experienced. Therefore, he was extremely sensitive to the sense of crisis. Although the white-haired old man was a 2-star battle saint, he gave him an inexplicable sense of crisis. This obviously did not make sense, because, although he was a 1-star battle saint, it was easy for him to kill a 2-star battle saint with his means. Therefore, he stopped young Master Hao and took the initiative to come down. He wanted to personally explore the white-haired old man's background. And this trip was really not in vain. After a while, the white-haired old man looked up at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile. This old man carefully thought about it. Recently, nothing particularly important happened in Qinghai. Thank you, old man. Goodbye. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. He did not continue to ask. He soared into the sky and landed beside young master Hao and shook his head at them. Wang Yuer frowned and said, It seems that we have to enter the inland sea to find out. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Whoosh! The three of them cut through the sky and quickly entered the sea. Soon, they disappeared at the end of the sea. Soon, the white-haired old man opened his eyes again and looked at the end of the sea. He got up and said with a smile, Let's go. I hope we can gain something in Qinghai. Swish! Immediately, the people around him opened their eyes and followed the white-haired old man to the sea. Including the white-haired old man, there were a total of 36 people. At the same time, above the deep sea, Qin Feiyang and the other two were flying as fast as lightning. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang stopped. What's the matter? Wang Yuer and young master Hao turned to look at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, It suddenly occurred to me that I have something to deal with. You go first. I'll catch up with you later. Something else? Wang Yuer frowned and said angrily, Why do you have so many things to do? Why do you say that I'm a busy man? Well, I'll go first. Be careful. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly and turned around to go back. Bastard. Wang Yuer gritted her teeth and stared at Qin Feiyang's back. Young master Hao looked thoughtful. He suddenly turned to look at Wang Yuer and said with a frown, Sister, why do I feel that this guy seems to be hiding something from us on purpose? It's not as if there's something that he doesn't want us to know. Wang Yuer snorted and turned to continue walking. What kind of person are you? Why can't I see through you? Chapter 995. And then there was Qin Feiyang. Along the way, his eyes were flashing with thoughts. About 10 breaths passed. Suddenly, his pupils shrank. He quickly restrained his aura and hid in the sea below. After a while, dozens of figures passed through the sky in a grandiose manner. The leader was the white-haired old man. After the group of people went away, Qin Feiyang came out of the sea and stood in the air, looking at the back of the white-haired old man, his eyes flickering. Then, he turned around and sped away. Soon, he came to the sky above the beach again. Why did you come back? The people on the beach stared at Qin Feiyang in confusion. Swish! Qin Feiyang landed in front of a young man and said with a smile, Brother, I have a question to ask you. The young man thought that Qin Feiyang was going to harm him, so he was quite nervous, but when he heard that he had a question, he was relieved. What question? The young man asked. Qin Feiyang said, Do you know the white-haired old man who talked to me just now? I don't know. The young man shook his head. Qin Feiyang frowned and asked again, When did he come here? I don't know, because when I came he was already here. The young man said. Then when did you come? Qin Feiyang said. The young man said before dawn. Qin Feiyang frowned. The young man's answer was worthless. I know when he came, but at this moment a hoarse voice sounded. Qin Feiyang looked at the voice and saw an old man in red sitting in the crowd, not far away. He looked old, but his eyes were extremely sharp, and if one looked carefully, one would find that his left hand was empty. It was obviously a broken arm. Moreover, Qin Feiyang could not see through the aura of the one-armed old man. Qin Feiyang raised a trace of vigilance in his heart. He strode forward and said with a smile, Please tell me the truth. The one-armed old man said, They came last night around dawn. Midnight. Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes and asked, Then may I ask if you've seen them in Qinghai before? This old man can confirm that there is absolutely no such thing, because this old man has been in Qinghai for many years. Anyone who has been here will have an impression of me." The one-armed old man said, "Thank you, elder. This is a small token of appreciation from this junior. Please kindly accept it." Qin Feiyang took out a regeneration pill and handed it to the one-armed old man. The one-armed old man looked at the regeneration pill with a hint of surprise in his eyes. It was actually a regeneration pill with 4 pill veins. However, the one-armed old man didn't reach out to take it. He smiled and said, "For some reason, this old man's severed arm can no longer be regenerated. However, I still have to thank little brother for his kind intentions." Unable to regenerate, Qin Feiyang looked at the one-armed old man's left arm in surprise. "Little friend, do you have any other questions?" The one-armed old man asked with a smile. "No." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Thinking about it, it made sense. The one-armed old man's strength was even stronger than his. The regeneration pill was nothing for the old man. If it could be regenerated, the old man would have used the regeneration pill to regenerate it. Then, he put away the regeneration pill and was about to leave. The one-armed old man suddenly said, "Little brother, wait a moment." "What's the matter, elder?" Qin Feiyang looked back at the one-armed old man. The one-armed old man said, "This old man wants to give you a piece of advice. After entering the inland sea, you must be careful of the 10 heroes of Qinghai." 10 heroes of Qinghai? Qin Feiyang was stunned. What the hell was this? "You don't even know the 10 heroes of Qinghai. It seems that this is your first time in Qinghai. The 10 heroes of Qinghai are 10 people. Each of them has great talent and is the invincible king of the younger generation in the inland sea. As for their detailed information, it's not convenient for me to say more. You can take your time to find out." The one-armed old man said, "Thank you, old man. I'll pay more attention." Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and thanked him. Then he glanced at the others on the beach, only to find that they were all very afraid when they heard the name of the 10 heroes of Qinghai. It seemed that the so-called 10 heroes of Qinghai were indeed not simple people. Then Qin Feiyang didn't stay any longer. He cupped his hands and said goodbye to the one-armed old man. Then he turned around and disappeared at the end of the sea. "What an interesting little guy." The one-armed old man looked in the direction where Qin Feiyang disappeared. There was a strange light in his old eyes. On the other side, young Master Hao and Wang Yu also found an island. The island was not big, about half a mile. There were no plants on it, only bare rocks which had been eroded by the sea all year round and were full of holes. Young Master Hao said, "Sister, why don't we go to the island and wait for him? Do you know when he will come back? It's a waste of time to wait for him." Wang Yu snorted and flew straight over the island. Young Master Hao glanced at the island and had to follow her helplessly. When did such a beautiful little girl come to Qinghai? However, at this moment, a surprised voice sounded somewhere on the island. "Someone is here?" Wang Yu and young Master Hao looked at each other and stopped. They lowered their heads and looked in the direction of the voice. Immediately, their pupils shrank. They saw a young man sitting cross-legged on a rock in the center of the island. The young man was about 25 or 26 years old. He was about 1.8 meters tall. His upper body was naked, revealing 8 pectoral muscles. He only wore a pair of large underpants. His skin was bronze. His body was not very strong, but it was full of an amazing aura. Young Master Hao asked through sound transmission, "Sister, what's his cultivation?" 9-star battle saint. Wang Yu whispered. This young Master Hao was dumbfounded. This man seemed to be about the same age as him. How could he be so powerful? Swish! The young man sized up young Master Hao and Wang Yu. He suddenly stood up and landed in front of them. "Little beauty, this young master has taken a liking to you. Have some fun with this young master." He stared at Wang Yu without scruples. The possessiveness in his eyes was undisguised. Ah. Young master, how was stunned. There must be something wrong with this man's brain. Others would avoid this little she-devil as soon as they saw her. How dare this man take the initiative to provoke her? It seemed that there would be a good show. As expected, Wang Yu was angry at the young man's frivolous words and attitude. Boom! The coercion of a 9-star battle saint suddenly erupted. She took a step forward and reached out her hand to slap the young man angrily. You're also a 9-star battle saint? The young man was surprised, but his action was not slow at all. He quickly dodged to the side and avoided Wang Yu's slap. Then he reached out his hand and grabbed Wang Yu's wrist. Feeling her soft skin, the young man's heart skipped a beat. He chuckled and said, "What a seductive little fox. If you talk nonsense again, I'll tear your mouth." Wang Yu's eyes turned cold. Her arm shook violently and her battle chi surged, shaking the young man away. "I haven't met such a hot-tempered little beauty for a long time. I like it. From now on, you are young master's woman. Come into young master's embrace." The young man opened his hands and laughed evilly. "You're playing with fire." Young master Hao muttered and glanced at Wang Yu. Only to see her face as cold as ice. But suddenly, she flashed a smile that was full of charm. The young man couldn't help but be fascinated by her. "Do you really like me?" Wang Yu looked at the young man and asked with a smile, her eyes rippling with autumn light. "Yes." The young man nodded. Wang Yu said, "Then are you willing to do something for me?" "Not to mention one thing. I can do 100 things for you," the young man said with rapid breathing. In his eyes, Wang Yu at this moment exuded a fatal temptation. A sly look flashed across Wang Yu's eyes. She said, "Take off your pants and run around the sea naked." "Run around naked?" Young master Hao was shocked. But Wang Yu's voice seemed to contain an irresistible charm. The young man really took off his pants and ran past the two of them without looking back. However, when the young man took off his pants, Wang Yu also looked away. Young master Hao looked at the young man's naked back and couldn't help but twitch his face. He turned to look at Wang Yu and said, "Sister, aren't you a little immoral?" "Immoral?" "It's good that I didn't let him hit his head and die." Wang Yu smiled coldly and ignored the young man. She turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the sky. "You asked for it." Young master Hao turned to look at the young man again, shook his head in amusement, and quickly chased after Wang Yu. Looking at the young man again, although he was running naked, he still had an infatuated look on his face. "Look, isn't that someone running here naked?" It's true." "He's crazy." Dozens of people flew over. When they saw the young man, they were all stunned. It was the old man in white and his group. The young man didn't notice it at all and ran straight past them. The old man in white looked at his companions with a strange expression and asked, "Is this popular in Qinghai?" "I don't know." Everyone shook their heads with a confused look. Soon, another figure flew over from a distance. It was Qin Feiyang who had returned. "What do you mean?" Seeing the young man running around naked, Qin Feiyang was also confused. Running around naked in broad daylight? Is there something wrong with him? When the young man passed by Qin Feiyang grabbed him and asked, Hey, brother, what are you doing? Are you doing some performance art?" Boom! Qin Feiyang's words were like a blow to the young man's head, which suddenly woke him up. "What's going on?" He glanced around in confusion. Don't tell me he doesn't know he's running around naked? Seeing the young man's reaction, Qin Feiyang's expression was very strange. "Why do I feel a little cold?" The next moment, the young man suddenly felt that his lower body was a little chilly. Chapter 996. Following closely, the young man suddenly turned around, grabbed Qin Feiyang's clothes, and roared, "Where's my big underwear?" "How would I know where your big underwear is?" Qin Feiyang pushed him away and rolled his eyes. It seemed that this person was really sick, and quite sick at that. It was better not to provoke sick people. Qin Feiyang prepared to leave, but the young man grabbed him again and said angrily, "Don't even think about leaving if you don't explain yourself." "Who did I offend? You ran naked yourself, and now you're asking me, are you really sick?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. "I ran naked myself?" The young man was stunned for a moment, then said angrily, "How can there be a person in this world who runs naked?" "Aren't you one?" Qin Feiyang said weakly. The young man was at a loss for words. To be exact, he had not recovered yet. "Try to recall what happened," Qin Feiyang said. The young man lowered his head and fell into deep thought, but his big hand was firmly holding onto Qin Feiyang. It seemed that he was not prepared to let Qin Feiyang leave until he figured it out. "There's a woman." Suddenly, the young man's body trembled, and a shocking cold light emerged in his eyes. "Woman?" Qin Feiyang was startled, and a beautiful figure involuntarily appeared in his mind, and asked, "What woman?" "A pretty woman. With the cultivation of a 9-star war saint, I have full confidence in taking her down." But her voice seemed to have a kind of magic. "She told me to run naked, and I actually started to run naked." The young man said, "It can't really be that little demoness, right?" Qin Feiyang muttered to himself, then glanced at a certain part of the young man and coughed dryly. "Shouldn't you put on a pair of pants first?" "Ah!" the young man screamed, and only now did he realize that he was still naked. He instinctively reached out to touch the Cosmos bag, but found that it was also gone. "What's wrong?" Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. The young man said awkwardly, "My Chinkuan bag was tied to the underwear from before. I think it was thrown away together." "I really admire you." Qin Feiyang looked at the sky, speechless. He took out a new set of clothes from his Chinkuan bag and threw it to the young man. The young man didn't say anything and quickly put it on. Only then did he feel a lot more comfortable. Subsequently, he looked at Qin Feiyang and said with an embarrassed smile, "I misunderstood you just now. Please forgive me." "I'm fine." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and asked curiously, "What does that woman look like? Why are you so infatuated?" The young man was furious. With a wave of his hand, his battle qi surged and formed a figure in the void. "It really is her," Qin Feiyang whispered as he looked at the young man with a hint of schadenfreude in his eyes. Without a doubt, this man must have taken the initiative to provoke Wang Yu, and completely infuriated her. Otherwise, Wang Yu wouldn't have used her charming skill. Hearing Qin Feiyang's whisper, the young man asked suspiciously, "Brother, do you know her too?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded vaguely. "Then the next time you meet her, you have to be careful, lest you end up like me. It's really embarrassing." The young man was furious. "I will. Are you going to get even with her now? Or?" Qin Feiyang asked calmly. "Nonsense. Of course I'm going to get even with her. How dare she make me run naked? In the future, she won't have a good life in Qinghai." The young man snorted through his nose, and his eyes were as sharp as a blade. Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank. This man's aura was unfathomable, and his character was so domineering. It seemed that he was not a simple character. The young man said, "By the way, brother, I haven't asked your name." "Wang Shan." Qin Feiyang made up a name casually. "What a coincidence. My surname is also Wang, and my name is Wang Zicheng. It seems that we are destined." The young man smiled in surprise. "Yes, it's quite destined." Qin Feiyang nodded unnaturally. "What the hell? I just thought of a name casually, and I actually met someone with the same surname." Wang Zicheng smiled and asked, "Brother, what are you doing in Qinghai? I don't think I've seen you before. It's my first time here, and I want to go to the inland sea to have a look." Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Wang Zicheng nodded and said enthusiastically, "That's great. I'm going to the inland sea too. Why don't we go together?" "Go together?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and said, "Aren't you going to find that woman?" "I think she's going to the inland sea, so there's no hurry. We'll meet sooner or later. At that time, I'll make her submit to my obscene power." Wang Zicheng snorted coldly. Qin Feiyang smiled and nodded. "Well, thank you for taking care of me along the way, Brother Wang. It's fate that we meet. Why are you so polite?" Wang Zicheng said with dissatisfaction. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and said with a smile. Then the two of them chatted as they flew into the depths of the sea. Wang Zicheng was very talkative, and he was born to be familiar with others. Soon, he and Qin Feiyang became brothers. Suddenly, Wang Zicheng asked, "Brother, what do you think of that woman?" "Which woman?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "The woman who tricked me," Wang Zicheng said. "She's not bad." Qin Feiyang thought for a while and said, "That's not bad? Brother, you're a bit picky. Let me tell you, it's hard to see a beauty like her in Qinghai," Wang Zicheng said with a smile. Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked, "Brother Wang, do you know Qinghai very well?" "Of course. I'm not bragging, but there's nothing I don't know in Qinghai," Wang Zicheng said proudly. Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat, but he pretended to doubt and asked, "Really?" "Of course. Why would I lie to you? Now I'll tell you a secret that you don't know." "No, not only you don't know, even in the entire Central Divine Kingdom, few people know the secret," Wang Zicheng said mysteriously. "What secret?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. Wang Zicheng glanced around and said in a low voice, "A cluster of 7th-grade elixir fire was born in the inland sea." Qin Feiyang's expression went blank as he asked in surprise, "Really?" "It's absolutely true, and I know the location of the 7th-grade elixir fire. To tell you the truth, I went to the inland sea this time for the 7th-grade elixir fire," Wang Zicheng said with a smile. "You actually know the location." Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. It was true that he had searched high and low for it, but found it without any effort. However, he didn't rush to ask about the location of the elixir fire, but asked, "Brother Wang, are you an alchemist?" "No." Wang Zicheng shook his head. "Then what do you want the elixir fire for?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "Of course, to collect it. After all, it's a 7th-grade elixir fire. It's completely worth collecting. And if I don't rob it, it will definitely fall into the hands of those people. I don't want them to get it." Wang Zicheng pursed his lips. "Who are those people?" Qin Feiyang asked. "I'll answer this question later." Wang Zicheng smiled mysteriously, then looked down and said, "Here we are. I met that woman here." Qin Feiyang looked down and saw an island sitting on the sea ahead. "Wait for me. I'll look for my chinkuan bag." After Wang Zicheng finished speaking, he dived into the island and looked around. "Wang Zicheng!" Qin Feiyang looked at the young man with an inexplicable light in his eyes. "Found it." A moment later, Wang Zicheng finally found the big pants and the chinkuan bag in a crack of a stone. Then he flew to the front of Qin Feiyang and rejoiced. "Fortunately, they didn't pick it up, or I would have lost a lot." Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "So there are a lot of treasures in Brother Wang's chinkuan bag. I've been living here since I was a child, and Qinghai is rich in resources. Plus there are many relics, so there are naturally many treasures." Wang Zicheng smiled proudly. "You've been living in Qinghai since you were a child?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "There's nothing to be surprised about. In addition to me, there are many people here who were born and grew up in Qinghai. Although Qinghai is also a part of the Central Divine Kingdom, It is a world of its own. In short, the people and things in Qinghai will be beyond your imagination. Wang Zicheng said. Qin Feiyang asked. Then Brother Wang, have you been to the divine city? I've heard of it, but I've never been there. When I have time in the future, I'll go and take a look. Speaking of this, Wang Zicheng was slightly stunned, then looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, You're not from the divine city, are you? No, but I've stayed in the divine city. Qin Feiyang nodded. Chapter 997. When he saw Qin Feiyang, the white-clothed old man's eyes flashed with a cold light, but he concealed it in an instant. Whoosh! Immediately after, he soared into the air and flew towards Qin Feiyang. The others also followed behind the white-clothed old man, with a trace of killing intent hidden in their eyes. The situation is not good, Qin Feiyang muttered. The sense of crisis in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Finally, both sides met. The white-haired old man and his group formed a line, blocking in front of the two. Wang Zicheng frowned, stopped in the air, and said, What do you want to do? The white-haired old man looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously, and then looked at Qin Feiyang and laughed. I didn't expect to meet you so soon. It seems that we are quite fated. Is that so? But why do I feel that this is not fate, but deliberate? Qin Feiyang said. The white-haired old man's pupils shrank slightly, and he said suspiciously, Little friend, why can't this old man understand what you mean? Do you not understand, or are you pretending to be confused? Qin Feiyang asked. The group of people around the white-haired old man looked at each other, listening to the meaning of these words. Could it be that this child had already seen through their killing intent? But that shouldn't be the case. Ever since they met this child, they had not revealed any flaws. The white-haired old man was also very surprised. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, I don't have time to play with you. Just say it. Who are you? The white-haired old man's face was gloomy. Haha, suddenly. He laughed out loud, and his temperament changed drastically. The amiable look between his brows disappeared, and was filled with an astonishing, murderous aura. The dozens of people next to him also changed their appearance, and their aura was fierce. Qin Feiyang's heart sank. There was indeed something wrong with these people. Suddenly, the white-clothed old man stopped laughing and looked at Qin Feiyang. As expected of the person valued by the chief pagoda master, you were able to detect it so quickly. Someone valued by the chief pagoda master. Wang Zicheng was shocked. Who would have thought that this brother he had just met would have such a great background? The old man in white continued. But this old man is very curious. How exactly did you see through it? You were able to hide it from young Master Hao and the others because they rarely travel outside. They don't know how sinister people can be. But I've been wandering the world since I was young. No matter what, I've encountered all kinds of people. That little trick of yours is nothing at all. Qin Feiyang sneered. The old man in white was stunned for a moment before he nodded and smiled. The two of them have been living like princes, so they can't be compared to you. I have another question. Where did you go just now? Qin Feiyang said, Let's go back to the beach and ask about your situation. I see. No wonder you appeared behind us. I have to admit that you are a very outstanding young man. If it weren't for the orders from above, I really wouldn't be willing to kill you. The old man in white said with a smile. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, Who are the people above? Were you the one who ambushed me last night? Wait until you go to hell. Someone will tell you the answer. The old man in white smiled coldly. He then looked at Wang Zicheng and said, This has nothing to do with you. Leave immediately. Wang Zicheng smiled playfully and said, What if I don't leave? Then you'll die with him. Attack! The old man in white was filled with murderous intent. Whoosh! Instantly, the dozens of people around him moved in unison. surrounding Qin Feiyang and Wang Zicheng in the middle. Wang Zicheng swept his gaze across those people. There was deep disdain in his eyes as he said, "With just the few of you?" To him, crushing a group of combat masters was no different from crushing a group of ants. Bang! However, before he finished his words, the dozens of people's aura suddenly erupted. The aura of a combat master rapidly soared to that of a combat sage and did not stop there. 1 star, 5 star, 7 star, 8 star. In the end, everyone's aura actually stopped at 9-star combat sage. This, Wang Zicheng was dumbfounded. 1, 2, 3. There were actually a total of 35 combat sages. Qin Feiyang was also dumbfounded. He had already expected that these people had hidden their cultivation, but he never expected that they were all 9-star combat sages. In that case, wouldn't that white-haired old man be even stronger? After Wang Zicheng came back to his senses, his expression was extremely ugly. He said in shock and anger, "Brother, you didn't tell me this." Before this, I didn't know their true cultivation, but I warned you not to underestimate them. You were the one who didn't listen. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice. Wang Zicheng was also very regretful, but now it was too late to regret. Boom! Suddenly, he turned around and punched the 2 burly men behind him. His battle aura surged and shook the sky. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that these people had not reacted to take the initiative to launch an attack and quickly create a gap. But obviously he had underestimated these people. The old man in white waved his hand and shouted, "Leave no one alive!" The 35 people surrounding Qin Feiyang and Wang Zicheng actually all attacked in an instant. Rumble, crash, crack. Streaks of battle aura surged out and roared in the sky, surrounding Qin Feiyang and Wang Zicheng. The calm sea suddenly tumbled and white waves surged to the sky. The island below was instantly shattered and turned into nothingness. Oh no! Wang Zicheng's expression changed greatly. If there were only 1 or 2 9-star combat sages, he was confident that he could kill his way out. But if 35 9-star combat sages attacked together, he might not even be able to survive, let alone kill his way out. But now, it seemed that there was no way to retreat. If you have the ability, fight one-on-one with me. What kind of man are you to bully me with numbers? Wang Zicheng shouted, "One-on-one." The old man in white looked at him with ridicule. Apparently, he was mocking Wang Zicheng for being too naive. Damn it, looks like I can only fight with my life on the line. Wang Zicheng saw that his provocation did not work. His face suddenly darkened and a destructive aura spread out from his body. This aura, Qin Feiyang's gaze trembled. This was the prelude to self-destructing his physical body. Seeing this, a trace of panic appeared on the faces of the 35 9-star battle saints. They could not help but be afraid, because the self-destruction of the 9-star combat sages was enough to kill all of them. Some of them even retreated in fear. No one is allowed to retreat. I don't believe that he really dares to self-destruct his body. But at this moment, the old man in white shouted coldly, "Old thing, why don't you go and find out who I am? There's nothing in this world that I don't dare to do." Wang Zicheng sneered and had no intention of stopping. The destructive aura around him became stronger and stronger. He really dares to self-destruct? The old man in white was surprised. Wang Zicheng said, "Since there are so many of you, and we can't escape, we might as well die together with you. Damn it, he doesn't look like he's joking. Retreat quickly." One of the burly men shouted and retreated without hesitation. Once the burly man fled, the others could no longer control the fear in their hearts. They turned around and fled without looking back. A bunch of useless trash. The old man in white's eyes darkened and a terrifying aura rushed out from his body. It was not the aura of a saint, but the aura of an emperor. Qin Feiyang and Wang Zicheng's mood instantly fell to the bottom. This old thing indeed had hidden his strength. You want to self-destruct in front of me? Let's see if you have the ability. The old man in white laughed coldly. The Emperor's aura was like a waterfall, instantly imprisoning Qin Feiyang and Wang Zicheng in the void. Wang Zicheng's self-destruction was also forcefully interrupted. Brother, quickly think of a way. Wang Zicheng shouted. Just as the old man in white had said, he did not dare to self-destruct. After all, who would be willing to die unless they were truly at a dead end? He did this purely to scare these people and find a chance to escape. However, he did not expect that this old thing was actually a combat emperor. It was not impossible to stop the self-destruction of the physical body. As long as there was an overwhelming strength, like the old man in white who used the emperor's aura to imprison Wang Zicheng, he could forcefully interrupt it. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. He gritted his teeth and transmitted his voice. Find a way to break the restraints of the emperor's aura. I'll take you away. Okay, break for me. Wang Zicheng nodded and let out a hysterical roar. His aura soared to the sky. Boom! The next moment, he actually broke through the emperor's aura that imprisoned the two of them. How is this possible? The old man in white's eyes trembled. It was simply a fantasy for a combat saint to break through the emperor's aura. Qin Feiyang was also extremely shocked. Although Wang Zicheng was a 9-star combat saint and was only one step away from becoming a combat emperor, there was an uncrossable gap between combat saints and combat emperors. How did this person do it? However, there was no time to think about this now. Restrain your aura, Qin Feiyang hurriedly said to Wang Zicheng. Then he grabbed Wang Zicheng's wrist. The next moment, the two of them disappeared into thin air from the old man in white's sight. What? The old man in white scanned the void in surprise. Those 9-star combat saints were also dumbfounded. They were right in front of them just a moment ago. How did they suddenly disappear? Was it a magic trick? Brother, what's going on? Wang Zicheng was also dumbfounded. This was because they had not moved at all from the beginning to the end. They were still standing in front of the old man in white. However, the old man in white and his group actually treated them like air. This was too strange, wasn't it? This is a combat art that can make one invisible. As long as we restrain our aura and don't make a sound, even if we appear in front of them, they won't be able to see us. Qin Feiyang smiled and transmitted his voice. That's right. This was the concealment art. The concealment art could not only make the user invisible, but it could also make the people and objects around them invisible as well. This was the most powerful part of the concealment art. However, the prerequisite was that there must be zero contact with the user. This meant that if they wanted to become invisible with Qin Feiyang, they had to capture Qin Feiyang. Damn, is there such a combat art in this world? When Wang Zicheng heard this, he felt like he was dreaming. It was too unreal. If you don't believe me, I'll take you to try it. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and led Wang Zicheng to the old man in white. They were only half a meter away from each other. Wang Zicheng glanced at Qin Feiyang and raised his other hand, tentatively. He waved it in front of the old man in white. Seeing that the old man in white did not react at all, he said in surprise, "It really works." Subsequently, he transmitted his voice and asked, "Is there a time limit to your concealment art? Or are there any other drawbacks?" "Yes." "It can only be maintained for an hour. It can only be used once a day. As for the drawbacks, I have only used it twice. I haven't discovered them yet." Qin Feiyang said to himself, "This is also very heaven-defying." Wang Zicheng exclaimed. For people at their level, they could do a lot of things in an hour. Qin Feiyang glanced at the group of 9-star combat saints. His eyes flashed and he transmitted his voice. "How is it? Do you have any ideas?" "Ideas?" Wang Zicheng was stunned. Following Qin Feiyang's gaze, the corners of his mouth suddenly hooked up into an evil smile and said, "Such a good opportunity. Of course I have ideas." Chapter 998. Where on earth did they go? It's impossible for them to have vanished from the face of the earth. They must be hiding somewhere. The group of people scanned the void, their eyes full of bewilderment. The old man in white also scanned the surroundings, not missing any part of the void. Bang! Ah! All of a sudden, a terrifying aura emerged. Following closely, a shrill scream reverberated in the sky above the sea. The next moment after the scream, the aura disappeared in an instant. The white-haired old man and the rest heard the scream and immediately turned to look, only to see a middle-aged man falling into the sea below. There was a thumb-sized bloody hole between the middle-aged man's eyebrows. It was penetrated from the front to the back, and blood spurted out like a fountain. How is this possible? The group of people turned pale with fright. The middle-aged man was their companion. He was in the middle of the group, but no one saw how he died. It must be them. Where are they hiding? Come out quickly. Don't hide. In addition to being angry, the group of people was extremely panicked. They could not see the other party and could not fight back. Bang! Ah! Suddenly, that terrifying aura emerged again. The previous situation happened again. Another middle-aged man spattered blood in the sky and quickly fell into the sea, swallowed by the sea. Bastard! If you have the ability, come out and fight fair and square. What kind of man are you if you hide and scheme? The white-haired old man gritted his teeth. In less than 3 breaths, 2 9-star battle saints had fallen. Such a loss was heart-wrenching. Previously, when I asked you to fight one-on-one with me, you were unwilling. Now that you can't do anything to me, you want me to go out and fight fair and square with you. Do you think it's possible? Wang Zicheng's mocking voice reverberated in the void. Die, the white-haired old man said coldly. He waved his big old hand, and his battle aura was like a dragon, roaring in the direction of the voice. But in the end, there was no reaction. Instead, one of his companions was killed. His head was penetrated, and he died on the spot. The remaining 32 battle saints were completely in a panic, and their hearts were drowned by fear. The other party had been hiding in the dark, and there was no way to guard against them. Moreover, after attacking, they immediately concealed their aura. They could not detect the location of the two at all. If this went on, they would be wiped out. Ah, following a painful scream, the 4th 9-star battle saint was killed. I can't take it anymore. Run. A thin, middle-aged man could no longer bear the torture. He turned around and fled frantically. However, as soon as he took a step forward, killing intent reappeared. A stream of battle chi appeared out of thin air and shot into the middle of the middle-aged man's forehead. Blood instantly dyed the sky red. The middle-aged man died in despair. Bastards, I'm going to tear you all apart. The white-haired old man roared. A dignified battle emperor could only watch as his subordinates were killed one by one. This kind of grievance, this kind of powerlessness, made him go mad. Boom! A world-shaking emperor's aura roared in all directions. The space within a radius of 12 miles began to twist and contort violently. In the sea below, huge waves that were hundreds of feet high rose up, covering the sky and the sun. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang and Wang Zicheng appeared in the void a few miles away, looking rather miserable. His face was pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. The concealment art was actually forcefully broken. Qin Feiyang found it hard to believe, but he didn't have time to think about it, because the white-haired old man had already discovered them, and like an enraged beast, he charged over crazily. Retreat! Wang Zicheng's pupils contracted. He grabbed Qin Feiyang and rushed into the sea below with a thud. Chase after them! The white-haired old man roared and took the lead to chase into the sea. Did you see that? However, the remaining 31 nine-star battle saints did not immediately chase after them. Their faces were filled with disbelief. I saw it. The blood at the corner of Ancestor Moo's mouth is purplish gold. Purplish gold blood. Is there such a color in the world? What kind of monster is he? Could it be that he's a monster? It's possible. It's said that some ferocious beasts, after cultivating to a certain extent, can transform into human form. Don't think about it. Chase after them. In an instant, everyone rushed into the sea, setting off huge waves. In the sea, Qin Feiyang and Wang Zicheng did not look back as they rushed to the bottom of the sea. The water pressure was surging from all directions. Wang Zicheng said anxiously, "Brother, quickly try. Can you still activate that invisibility technique?" Qin Feiyang immediately activated the concealment art, but it was useless. He shook his head and said no. This is troublesome. Wang Zicheng's eyes darkened. The white-robed old man was a war emperor, and his speed far surpassed theirs. If they did not think of a way, they would definitely be in trouble. Qin Feiyang's face was also extremely gloomy. He did not expect that the concealment art would be broken by the emperor's might. It seemed that this battle art was not invincible. There was a limit to it. Let's see where you can escape to today. Suddenly, the white-haired old man's murderous voice entered their ears. The two of them turned around, and their expressions changed. The white-haired old man had already caught up. He was probably only about 100 feet away. Don't be afraid. The water pressure in the deep sea is very high. It will limit his speed, and I have the water avoidance pearl. Wang Zicheng flipped his hand, and a crystal-clear water droplet appeared, emitting a hazy luster. As soon as the water avoidance pearl appeared, the water pressure in the surroundings immediately disappeared. The two of them instantly sped up by a large margin. In this deep sea, even a war emperor would find it difficult to do anything without the water avoidance pearl. Moreover, we even killed 4 nine-star war saints. It's not a loss. Wang Zicheng smiled proudly. Qin Feiyang's face also revealed a trace of a smile. However, in the next moment, the smile on their faces froze, because they sensed that the white-haired old man's aura not only did not pull away, but was instead getting closer and closer. Swoosh! The two of them turned around in surprise, and their expressions changed drastically. They saw that the white-haired old man was also holding a crystal-clear pearl in his hand. If that was not the water avoidance pearl, then what was it? They even prepared the water avoidance pearl in advance. It seems that this time they are determined to kill me. Qin Feiyang's eyes were hazy. Wang Zicheng said angrily, "Brother, who exactly did you offend?" Qin Feiyang said, "I am still unable to confirm their identity. Moreover, even if I tell you, you may not know. All right, although it's a headache, who asked me to have a brother like you?" Wang Zicheng smiled helplessly, glanced at the white-robed old man behind him, and said, "It seems that if we want to survive today, we have to show our trump card." Qin Feiyang was surprised. The difference in speed between a 9-star war saint and a war emperor was more than 1 or 2 times. Even a perfect battle art would not be able to make up for this difference. But this person was actually so confident. Wang Zicheng said, "Grab my shoulder." Qin Feiyang was stunned, then followed his words and firmly grabbed Wang Zicheng's shoulder. Next, Wang Zicheng's face was solemn, his hands placed in front of his chest, and shouted, "With blood as the plan, with life as the guide, as the law orders, go!" Qin Feiyang looked at him in a daze. Why did he suddenly feel that this guy was like a fraud? Immediately after, he looked at the white-robed old man behind him. That's not right. His speed was still the same as before. What the hell was going on? He looked at Wang Zicheng strangely. I haven't used this move in a long time. It seems like the posture is wrong. Let's do it again. Wang Zicheng laughed embarrassedly. The posture is wrong? Qin Feiyang's face twitched. This was the first time he heard that to use a certain battle art, one needed the correct posture. Wang Zicheng glanced at Qin Feiyang awkwardly, then raised his right hand and stretched it forward. His left hand was placed in front of his chest. What kind of posture is this? Qin Feiyang looked at him blankly. He didn't even know how to describe this posture. It was as if Ultraman was fighting a monster. It was rather comical. Don't hold it in. If you want to laugh, then laugh. Wang Zicheng snorted coldly. His comical expression also made people not know whether to laugh or cry. Cough! Qin Feiyang coughed dryly, held back his laughter, and urged, Don't dawdle, hurry up! Humph! Wang Zicheng snorted coldly and chanted, With blood as the plan, with life as the guide, as the law orders, go! As soon as he finished speaking, a bloody mist suddenly rose from his body. Whoosh! Following closely, the speed of the two soared like a bolt of lightning, crazily shuttling in the sea. In the blink of an eye, they left the white-haired old man behind. So fast! Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. At this moment, their speed was definitely faster than a perfect battle art. It even gave people the illusion that they were teleporting. The white-haired old man and the group of 9-star battle saints behind were also dumbfounded. What the hell? This speed is too abnormal, isn't it? When they came to their senses, the two had already disappeared without a trace. What should we do? The group of 9-star battle saints looked at each other, somewhat at a loss. Finally, they looked at the white-robed old man. Go to the inland sea. His target is the alchemy fire. As long as we go to the inland sea first, we will see him sooner or later. The white-haired old man said gloomily. That makes sense. The group nodded. One of them suddenly looked at the white-haired old man and asked, By the way, did you see that the blood at the corner of Ancestor Mu's mouth was purplish gold? Purplish gold. The white-haired old man was bewildered. Because he was too angry at that time, he did not notice this. The 31 9-star battle saints nodded. The white-robed old man frowned and said, Impossible! How can there be such blood in this world? You must have seen wrongly. Did we really see wrongly? The group of people frowned. At the same time, Wang Zicheng was still shuttling through the sea with Qin Feiyang at an extremely fast speed. About 50 breaths later, suddenly, Wang Zicheng stopped and looked back. Seeing that the white-robed old man did not follow, he breathed a sigh of relief. The blood mist on his body also dissipated. But just as Wang Zicheng turned back, Qin Feiyang looked as if he had seen a ghost. His face was full of horror. At this moment, Wang Zicheng's face was full of wrinkles, like an old man in his 60s or 70s. Moreover, his originally strong body seemed to have been hollowed out. He was as thin as a matchstick and his temples were full of white hair. Isn't it just old? What's there to look at? Wang Zicheng did not care at all, as if it was a very normal thing. He raised his head and looked around, then continued to fly forward. But his speed was not as fast as before. It was his usual speed, or even slower, as if he was very weak now. What's going on? Chapter 999. Wang Zicheng said impatiently, Isn't it enough to bring you out? Why are you asking so much? All right, let's just say I didn't ask. Qin Feiyang said. Seems like this should be a secret in Wang Zicheng's heart. Actually, it's not that I can't say it. A moment later, Wang Zicheng suddenly said. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. Previously, he didn't say anything when he asked. Now he was taking the initiative to say it. Why was this person so fickle? Wang Zicheng said, This is a forbidden technique. Forbidden technique? Qin Feiyang was startled. Yes, forbidden techniques are not comparable to battle arts. Battle arts can be used as one pleases without any restrictions, but forbidden techniques can only be used to save one's life. because using a forbidden technique will cause an indelible injury to the user, which is the so-called side effect. And the forbidden technique that I used before used my blood as a plan, my life as a guide, in exchange for surpassing my own speed limit. In other words, to use this forbidden technique, I need to use my blood qi and lifespan as the price. Wang Zicheng explained. So it's like that. Qin Feiyang suddenly realized no wonder this guy was so old now and asked, "Then how long can this forbidden technique of yours last?" 100 breaths. Once it exceeds 100 breaths, unless there is a peerless divine pill that can extend one's life, one will definitely die. Wang Zicheng said. Qin Feiyang was secretly speechless. Although Wang Zicheng's forbidden technique could be exchanged for unparalleled speed, the price was too great. I remember that from the beginning to the end, you lasted for about 50 breaths. That means you only have half of your life force and blood qi left? Qin Feiyang said worriedly. Don't worry. I'm about to break through to the War King, and my lifespan will increase exponentially. Sacrificing this little bit is nothing to worry about. Wang Zicheng smiled confidently without the slightest bit of worry. On the contrary, it seemed that Qin Feiyang was worrying too much. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. He did not know Wang Zicheng's true age, but he reckoned that it was around the same age as young Master Hao. It seemed that this Qinghai was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Suddenly, he thought of another problem. Previously, how had Wang Zicheng broken through the white-robed old man's emperor's pressure? According to what he knew, only by opening the door of potential would one be able to break through the pressure that surpassed one's cultivation. In other words, it was very likely that Wang Zicheng had also opened the door of potential. He looked at Wang Zicheng's back and his eyes flickered. Right now, he really had the urge to immediately rip off Wang Zicheng's clothes. But in the end, he suppressed this impulse. That was because doing so would definitely incur Wang Zicheng's displeasure. At that time, Wang Zicheng might even turn hostile. Brother, I've told you everything you want to know. Shouldn't you tell me who you are? Wang Zicheng suddenly stopped and turned to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and said with a smile, I won't hide it from Brother Wang. In fact, I am the direct disciple of the chief pagoda master. What? You are so weak, yet you can become his personal disciple. What kind of foresight does he have? Wang Zicheng was dumbfounded. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. Yes, compared to Wang Zicheng, his strength was indeed a lot weaker. But there was no need to be so blatant about it, right? Moreover, how much older was Wang Zicheng than him? If he was as old as Wang Zicheng, he had full confidence that his strength would definitely be stronger than Wang Zicheng. I'm a straightforward person. Don't mind me. Wang Zicheng laughed mischievously. You don't have the slightest sincerity in apologizing. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. But then again, since the chief pagoda master accepted you as his disciple, I believe you should have something extraordinary. How about it? Let me see it. Wang Zicheng looked at him provocatively. Not interested. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Wang Zicheng teased. Don't be shy. I'm not a pervert. Besides, I'm not interested in men. Don't go too far. Qin Feiyang's veins popped. Okay. I won't say any more, but you're really boring. I guess you can't even find a woman because your EQ is too low. Wang Zicheng glanced at him with disdain and then flew towards the surface of the sea. I'm sorry to disappoint you. There are quite a lot of women who like me, and I already have a fiancé. Do you have one? Qin Feiyang followed him unhurriedly and said indifferently, What? You have a fiancé? Wang Zicheng looked at him in shock and then laughed. Then I guess it must be a big dinosaur. Otherwise, why would she take a fancy to you? Big dinosaur? Qin Feiyang smiled playfully. If Wang Yuer heard this, Wang Zicheng would probably have to run naked again. Achoo! In the sky above a certain sea area, Wang Yuer, who was galloping, suddenly sneezed. She rubbed her nose and furrowed her beautiful brows. Why did I suddenly sneeze? Is someone scolding me? It must be. And it should be that bastard ancestor Mu. But where did that little bastard go? He hasn't come back yet. Half an hour passed. Qin Feiyang and Wang Zicheng rushed out of the sea and stood in the sky above the sea area looking ahead. A moment later, Wang Zicheng retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang. It's still half a day's journey to the inland sea. Shall we rush there immediately or find a place to rest first? Qin Feiyang said, In your current state, it's better for you to rest first. Okay, I remember that there is an island in the northwest. It's not far from here. Let's go there to rest. Wang Zicheng said, Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Whoosh! Immediately after, the two turned into a stream of light and rushed towards the northwest like lightning. Another hour or so passed. An island finally came into their sight. This island was different from the islands they had seen before. It was more than 10 miles wide, like a small continent floating on the sea. And looking at it, the entire island was covered with a layer of green vegetation, and they could faintly feel the aura of fierce beasts. And as they got closer, the aura of those beasts became more obvious. Even Qin Feiyang sensed the aura of a few holy beasts. He couldn't help but be vigilant. Don't worry, I've been to this island several times. There are no beasts that can threaten us. No, to be exact, there are no beasts that can threaten me. Wang Zicheng said proudly. The implication was that if Qin Feiyang entered the island alone, it was likely to be a disaster. Qin Feiyang glanced at him and didn't say anything. Dozens of breaths later, the two entered the island and landed on the top of a 500 to 600 feet high mountain in the middle of the island. On the top of the mountain, there were weeds everywhere, but there were no dense trees. The field of vision was very open, and they could observe the situation of the entire island. However, on a rock at the edge of the cliff, there was a black falcon. Its body was very large, more than 10 meters long. It stared at Qin Feiyang and Wang Zicheng, and its eagle eyes were shining with a shocking light. Holy beast! Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank. The aura emitted by the falcon frightened even him. Don't be afraid, we're all old friends. Wang Zicheng smiled, waved at the falcon, and shouted enthusiastically, Little Bean, long time no see! Chirp! The falcon suddenly soared, and a gust of wind blew. Qin Feiyang thought that it had become ferocious, but he didn't expect that it would actually flap its wings and disappear into the mountain stream below with a loud and clear cry. It didn't even look back, and in the falcon's cry, Qin Feiyang seemed to hear a trace of fear. Wang Zicheng shouted, Hey, why are you running? I didn't plan to beat you up this time. Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at him with a strange expression. The first time I came, I was sneak attacked by it, and as a result, I gave it a good beating. The next few times I came, I would go look for it first. It was probably scared by me and ran away when it saw me. In fact, I'm not a bad person. As long as it doesn't provoke me, it can be discussed. Wang Zicheng said helplessly. Qin Feiyang was speechless. He could have killed the falcon directly, but he did not do so, and every time he came he would run to beat it up. In the falcon's eyes, this guy was even more terrifying than a bad person. Buzz! Suddenly, the image crystal made a sound. Qin Feiyang's heart moved, and he looked at Wang Zicheng and said, You rest first, I'll go take a stroll around. What's there to stroll around? Wang Zicheng was suspicious, but Qin Feiyang did not answer. He turned around and flew towards the mountain stream below. I'm already mysterious enough, but this guy is even more mysterious than me. It seems that when I have time, I'll have to check up on him. Wang Zicheng muttered, looking at Qin Feiyang's back. his eyes flashing with an inexplicable color. A mountain stream. Next to a stream, Qin Feiyang took out the image crystal. Guoyang's shadow quickly condensed. Qin Feiyang asked, "Did you find it?" Guoyang nodded and said, "There is indeed a person who left the tribe yesterday morning." "Who?" Qin Feiyang said. "One of the leader's trusted aides is called Guo Xiangzhong, and he has the cultivation of a 1-star war emperor. In addition, I also heard that there were dozens of 9-star war saints who left with Guo Xiangzhong, but I didn't find out exactly how many there were." Guiyang said, "Guo Xiangzhong," Qin Feiyang muttered. Suddenly, he waved his hand, and the image of the white-haired old man condensed. He asked, "Is it him?" "No." Guiyang looked at the old man in white and shook his head. "It's not." Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said, "I understand. Continue to monitor your leader. If there's any news, immediately report to me." "Yes." Guoyang respectfully replied and turned off the image crystal. Qin Feiyang waved his hand again, dispersing the image of the white-haired old man. Then he kept the image crystal and lowered his head, deep in thought. Time passed breath by breath. Suddenly, a sneer crept onto his face. He was basically certain that the white-haired old man was Guo Xiangzhong. As for the difference in appearance, it must be because Guo Xiangzhong had deliberately changed his appearance. After all, he was now the direct disciple of the chief pagoda master, and assassinating the direct disciple of the chief pagoda master was not a small matter. If the assassination failed, the Qilin tribe would pay a heavy price. Qilin tribe. Let's ride a donkey and see who will have the last laugh. Qin Feiyang whispered. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he prepared to fly towards the peak of the mountain. But at this moment, Chapter 1000. In Qin Feiyang's heart, a fatal sense of crisis immediately emerged. Swoosh! Without hesitation, he used the phantom steps and quickly dodged to the side. The next moment, that black shadow shuttled past where he was previously standing at lightning speed. "Who is it?" Qin Feiyang shouted angrily. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat. Because if he was 1 second late, half a second late. If he was half a second late, the black shadow would definitely pass through his body and he would definitely lose his life. However, when he saw the black shadow's face, clearly he was stunned. It was a falcon. Its body was only the size of an adult's palm, and its eyes were shining fiercely. As for this falcon, he seemed to have seen it somewhere before. Right, he remembered. This little guy in front of him was the falcon that was scared away by Wang Zicheng on the mountain peak previously. It was only because its body had shrunk that he did not recognize it at first glance. "Why did you sneak attack me?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said angrily, "I can't kill him, so of course I can only kill you to vent my anger." The falcon smiled sinisterly. His holy aura suddenly erupted, and he pounced toward Qin Feiyang again. "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang was stunned, but in the next moment he understood. It turned out that this falcon wanted to kill Wang Zicheng, but it admitted that it did not have the ability, so it planned to kill him to vent its anger. He sized up the falcon seriously and quickly deduced its cultivation level. It was a 4-star battle saint. If you want to vent your anger, you have to find the right person. You're courting death by coming to find me. Murderous intent flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes. He directly rushed forward and slammed his palm in the air. Golden light burst out from his palm. Return formula. Chirp. With a wail, falcon was sent flying on the spot. His body cracked as blood stained the sky. So powerful, the falcon's pupils contracted. It thought that it could easily kill a 1-star battle saint, but it did not expect it to be so terrifying. Whoosh! It was scared. Using the impact of the return formula, it turned around and began to flee. "I'm not as merciful as Wang Zicheng." Qin Feiyang coldly smiled as he used phantom steps to quickly chase after him. Whether it was a human or a beast, as long as they dared to plot against him, he would not let them off. Even though Falcon was a 4-star battle saint, his phantom steps could increase his speed by 4 small realms. In other words, Qin Feiyang's current speed was comparable to a 5-star battle saint. In just a few blinks of an eye, Qin Feiyang had caught up to Falcon. Crimson Sword Qi surged out, transforming into an apocalyptic torrent that rushed towards Falcon. I know I was wrong. Don't kill me. Sensing the intense killing intent and sharpness, Falcon's body and mind trembled as he panicked to the extreme. If I didn't have a perfect support-type battle art, I would have died under your claws. Do you think it's possible for me to let you go now? Qin Feiyang laughed mockingly. I know I was wrong. Please let me go. If you let me go, I'll tell you a secret. Falcon stopped running because there was no way he could escape. He turned around and looked at Qin Feiyang pleadingly. Secret. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. With a thought, the Crimson Sword Qi stopped in the air. He said coldly, Don't say I didn't give you a chance. Tell me. Falcon said, There are ruins hidden under this island. Ruins. Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up and said, The exact location. Falcon said, The exact location is in the sea. If you enter the seabed from the southwest direction of this island, you will see a cave. It's inside the cave. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at the southwest direction. He then looked at Falcon and frowned. Why aren't you going to the ruins? I can't go in. Falcon said helplessly. What? Even you can't go in? Qin Feiyang was bewildered. Yes, the entrance of the cave is sealed by a barrier. I have tried many methods, but I can't break that barrier. Falcon said, That means this ruin is quite incredible. Qin Feiyang was tempted. Ruins were usually left behind by the ancients. If Falcon didn't lie to him, there must be some treasures hidden. Brother, why are there battle fluctuations? Did something happen? At this time, Wang Zicheng's worried voice sounded from the top of the mountain. Whoosh! Falcon's body trembled, and he immediately turned and fled. It seemed that the fear of Wang Zicheng had been imprinted in the depths of his soul. However, Qin Feiyang didn't stop him and let him leave. Brother, are you all right? Hurry up and answer me. Wang Zicheng's voice sounded again. I'm fine. It's just that an ignorant beast attacked me. I've already dealt with it. Qin Feiyang replied. All right, be careful. Although the beasts on this island aren't strong, there are still some that can hurt you. Wang Zicheng warned loudly. Got it. Qin Feiyang replied. After pondering for a moment, he turned and headed southwest. Whether Falcon lied to him or not, it was necessary to confirm it. With Qin Feiyang's speed, he soon arrived at the seaside. Glancing at the calm surface of the sea, he took a deep breath, took out a water avoidance pearl, and jumped in. The surface of the sea was calm, but the undercurrents were surging. However, with the water avoidance pearl, it didn't affect him. He quickly sank all the way. After about 100 breaths, he finally reached the bottom of the sea. The bottom of the sea was covered with a layer of mud that had accumulated for countless years. The traces of sea beasts could be faintly seen nearby. However, their aura wasn't very strong. Next, Qin Feiyang was at the bottom of the sea, carefully searching around the island. There really is one. After about 10 breaths, he was overjoyed. He really found a cave. The diameter of the cave entrance was about 2 meters, extending all the way to the depths of the island. It was pitch black inside. It just said that this entrance is sealed by a barrier. Staring at the cave, Qin Feiyang was silent for a moment. He tentatively raised his hand and reached towards the entrance. Buzz! Suddenly, a dazzling light curtain appeared at the entrance of the cave, blocking Qin Feiyang's hand. Qin Feiyang was shocked. This light curtain actually contained a terrifying emperor's might, giving him a strong sense of oppression. Obviously, this was really a relic, and it was left behind by a war emperor. Although there were many war emperors in the Forgotten Continent and the Great Qin Empire, it didn't mean that one could underestimate them. In this era where fake gods didn't appear, the war emperor was an existence that stood at the top of this world. Every one of them had the ability to reach the heavens. Therefore, the relics left behind by each war emperor were comparable to a great treasure. And for a war sage like Qin Feiyang to be able to obtain the relics of a war emperor was also a great fortune. Therefore, Qin Feiyang was very excited. He didn't expect to come to this place unintentionally and actually encounter a treasure. Bang! Suddenly, battle qi gushed out from his palm, and he slapped the barrier with all his might. However, not only did the barrier not show any signs of breaking, it even rebounded and sent him flying. His body also suffered heavy injuries, and a mouthful of purple gold dragon blood spurted out. It seems like there's no way to forcefully break it. After stabilizing his body, he stood not far away and looked at the pitch-black cave, his brows tightly knitted together. "So you're here." Suddenly, a cold snort sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. "Wang Zicheng." Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. He raised his head and saw Wang Zicheng standing above, looking at him angrily. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and asked, "Why are you here?" "When I heard your reply, I felt that something was wrong, so I followed you all the way here. I didn't expect you to find a relic. But that's not the point. The point is, I trust you so much, yet you actually hid it from me. Isn't that a bit too much?" Wang Zicheng said angrily. Qin Feiyang laughed and said, "Say it again with your conscience. Do you really believe me?" Wang Zicheng was at a loss for words. "I admit I do have a good impression of you, but I can't trust you and pour my heart out to you. After all, we just met not long ago. I believe that you think so too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be speechless now." Qin Feiyang said, "So what if I am? At least I won't be like you, always on guard against others." Wang Zicheng snorted and landed beside Qin Feiyang, looking at the entrance of the cave. "I don't know you. What's wrong with being on guard?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. In this world, except for a few people, there was no one he could completely trust. "All right, I won't talk nonsense with you." Wang Zicheng waved his hand impatiently and then rushed into the cave. Qin Feiyang's face changed, and he hurriedly shouted, "I tried just now. I can't forcefully break it. Come back." "Can you compare with me?" "You can't, but it doesn't mean that I can't either." Wang Zicheng smiled disdainfully. Whatever. Qin Feiyang simply did not care anymore. He advised him out of kindness. Not only did he not appreciate it, he even mocked him back. "Fine. You want to suffer, right? Go ahead. Break for me." Wang Zicheng rushed to the front of the hole, roared, and punched the barrier with all his strength. Boom! Immediately, a terrifying aura rolled out in this place, and the sea water immediately surged. Qin Feiyang retreated like lightning. At the same time, Wang Zicheng held in pain and was sent flying by the barrier. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and his arm was also lacerated. In the end, with a bang, he smashed into the mud not far from Qin Feiyang, looking extremely miserable. It seems that the stronger the force, the greater the rebound force. Qin Feiyang looked at the barrier, looked at Wang Zicheng, and said indifferently, "I tried to persuade you, but you didn't listen." Wang Zicheng got up, shook off the mud on his body, and said angrily, "But you didn't say that this barrier has a rebound force, and it's so strong." Unreasonable. Qin Feiyang glanced at him, looked at the barrier again, and fell into deep thought. Wang Zicheng also looked at the barrier, his face full of anger. Got it. After an unknown amount of time, Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. "What is it? Don't say that you have a way to break this barrier." Wang Zicheng said, He did not believe that with Qin Feiyang's cultivation, he would have this ability. Sorry, I really have a way, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Wang Zicheng was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously, What way? Qin Feiyang turned his hand and a rib appeared. Yeah. Chapter 1001. He had grown up in Qinghai and had seen countless rare treasures, so he could tell at a glance that the rib was extraordinary. Can you let me have a look? He quickly moved in front of Qin Feiyang, his eyes full of desire. Qin Feiyang ignored him and looked at the barrier at the entrance. This barrier was left by a combat arch, and Mu Tianyang was probably a god of war at his peak. Therefore, this rib bone should be useful. Boom! He rushed forward, raised the rib, and smashed it at the barrier. Accompanied by a deafening sound, the enchantment really did shatter, and it was as easy as crushing dry weeds. The barrier left by a combat arch was broken so easily. Wang Zicheng was dumbfounded. Whose rib was this? How could it be so terrifying? Splash! Boom! The barrier was broken, and the seawater immediately surged into the cave. Hurry! Qin Feiyang shouted. They were at the bottom of the sea, and the impact of the seawater was extremely terrifying. If they didn't stop it quickly, the things inside might be destroyed. Whoosh! The two turned into a stream of light and rushed into the cave. There was a dark tunnel inside, and the echoes of the seawater were deafening. Soon, the two rushed out of the seawater and landed on dry ground. Wang Zicheng immediately turned around, and his battle chi surged and turned into a barrier, sealing the tunnel behind him and blocking the seawater outside. Phew! Qin Feiyang let out a long breath, put away the water-repelling pearl and the rib, and turned to look into the tunnel. Brother, who did that rib belong to? It's so powerful. Before he saw the rib, he was quite interested in this relic. But now, his thoughts were all on the rib. He felt that even if there were some peerless treasures hidden in this relic, they wouldn't be as valuable as that rib. Qin Feiyang glanced at him and said vaguely, It belongs to a powerful expert. Can you make it clear? Wang Zicheng was a little depressed. What was the difference between this answer and not answering at all? I can't explain it clearly now. Let's go inside and take a look, Qin Feiyang said, and then walked deeper into the tunnel. Wang Zicheng frowned and followed behind Qin Feiyang. He did not continue to ask, but his eyes were fixed on Qin Feiyang's back. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but become vigilant. He hadn't known this person for long, so he had no idea what kind of person he was, so he had to be on guard. The seawater outside gradually calmed down, and the echoes disappeared. The tunnel fell into a dead silence. Only the sound of their footsteps could be heard. Why do I feel so depressed? Wang Zicheng spoke in a low voice, while a trace of vigilance arose in his heart. Qin Feiyang stared ahead, not daring to be distracted in the slightest. This was because he also felt oppressed and even found it difficult to breathe. This atmosphere made him very uncomfortable. Several hundred breaths passed. Suddenly, Wang Zicheng stopped and stared at Qin Feiyang in bewilderment. Look, there's light over there. Actually, even without Wang Zicheng's reminder, Qin Feiyang had already seen it. It was a wisp of weak flame. Moreover, the air also became a little hot. We should be there soon, be careful. Qin Feiyang warned in a low voice. I've seen more relics than you've eaten. Do I need you to remind me? Wang Zicheng smiled disdainfully. My good intentions are taken for granted. Qin Feiyang glanced at him coldly, but did not continue to pester him and continued to move forward. As they continued to go deeper, the weak flame became more and more obvious. The heat also became more and more intense. In the end, the two felt as if they were in a sea of fire, sweating all over. How could this be? Is there a volcano in front? Wang Zicheng muttered. Qin Feiyang also had the same feeling. After dozens of breaths, the light of the fire finally appeared clearly in front of the two of them. It turned out that the flame was the light emitted from the tunnel. The tunnel ahead was completely red, as if it was a piece of red-hot iron. Qin Feiyong bent down and reached out his hand to touch the crimson ground. It was very hot. If a mortal came here, they would be burned to ashes in an instant. However, Qin Feiyong and Wang Zicheng were both battle saints, so this temperature was not difficult for them. Qin Feiyong got up and looked deeper into the tunnel, frowning slightly. What was at the end of this tunnel? The two stepped forward again, stepping on the rolling ground, and continued to go deeper. Another few hundred breaths passed. Wang Zicheng was overjoyed, pointed forward, and exclaimed, "Is that the end?" In front, there was an exit 100 meters away. Through the exit, the two could clearly see that there was a large grotto outside. The grotto was also red. "Let's go." Qin Feiyong quickened his pace and quickly came to the exit. Standing at the edge of the exit, he scanned the grotto. The grotto was unimaginably large. The height was 500 to 600 meters, and the diameter was 300 to 400 meters. It was natural and not man-made. At the bottom of the grotto, there was boiling magma, emitting an extremely high temperature. It really is an underwater volcano. Wang Zicheng was surprised. Qin Feiyong said, "Let's look for it." With that, he took the lead and rushed into the grotto. "Let me tell you, we found this place together. Even if there are treasures, I have a share. Don't play tricks." Wang Zicheng also quickly flew in and said to Qin Feiyong, "Let's find it first." Qin Feiyong replied expressionlessly, then scanned the walls of the grotto, not letting go of any place. But in the end, he didn't find anything. Qin Feiyong couldn't help but frown, looked at Wang Zicheng beside him, and asked, "Did you find anything?" "No. Could it be that we're thinking too much, and this isn't a relic at all?" Wang Zicheng shook his head, also confused. "Impossible. If it's not a relic, how do you explain the barrier at the entrance? Furthermore, although this grotto is naturally formed, the tunnel is man-made." Qin Feiyong said, "When we passed by before, I also observed carefully, and it was indeed man-made." Wang Zicheng nodded, then said, "But there's really nothing here." "Could it be that we've overlooked something?" Qin Feiyong frowned. The two of them looked at the grotto again. Suddenly, the two of them lowered their heads and looked at the magma below at the same time, their eyes flickering. Whoosh! The next moment, the two of them dove down at the same time with tacit understanding. A battle chi barrier appeared on the surface of their bodies, and then they plunged into the magma. Swoosh! Not long after the two of them entered the magma, another figure appeared at lightning speed. It was a young man with a strong build. He was 2 meters tall. His upper body was bare like Wang Zicheng. His 8-pack abs were bulging, and he had a head of thick black hair. He was like a small giant exuding a wild aura. His lower body was wearing a pair of large pants made of animal skin, and his feet were bare. The aura he exuded was unfathomable. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Wang Zicheng, today I'll settle all our old scores. The young man stood at the edge of the tunnel and looked down at the churning magma below. His dark eyes were filled with mockery. Time passed breath by breath. About an hour later, 2 figures suddenly rushed out of the magma. It was Qin Feiyong and Wang Zicheng. It was also at this moment. The young man standing at the entrance of the tunnel suddenly released his aura. He rushed into the grotto like lightning and slammed his palm toward Wang Zicheng's chest. "Someone's here?" Qin Feiyong and Wang Zicheng were shocked. But it was too sudden, and Wang Zicheng had no time to counterattack or dodge. The young man's palm landed squarely on his chest. "Ah!" Wang Zicheng spat out a mouthful of blood, and with a painful howl, he fell into the magma below again. Qin Feiyong finally reacted. He quickly retreated to a corner of the grotto and looked at the young man warily. However, The young man didn't pay any attention to him at all. He stared straight at the lava below, as if treating Qin Feiyang as air. Looks like his target is Wang Zicheng. But why would he appear here? And his aura is so strong. He should be a 9-star battle saint like Wang Zicheng. Qin Feiyang mumbled. The grotto was dead silent. The churning magma gradually calmed down. Wang Zicheng did not appear. Is he dead? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. The young man suddenly shouted, Wang Zicheng, I don't believe you're so weak. Come out. Not only was he tall, his voice was also extremely loud, shaking Qin Feiyang's eardrums. Big bull, I really can't hide anything from you. Splash! Wang Zicheng rushed out of the magma and stood in front of the young man. His face was full of anger. Looks like you're very angry now. But didn't you sneak attack me like this back in the Internal Sea? I'm just returning an eye for an eye. The young man sneered. Wang Zicheng clenched his fists and said angrily, That was a few years ago, and you still remember it. You're too narrow-minded. You still have the face to say that? If it was just once or twice, I wouldn't be bothered to argue with you. But you actually stabbed me in the back time and time again. This is unforgivable. The brawny young man roared, his anger burning the heavens. Can you blame me for that? You're stupid and don't remember. Wang Zicheng said helplessly. Bastard, I'm not stupid. I trust you and treat you like a brother. The young man roared like an angry beast and punched at Wang Zicheng. Qin Feiyang glanced at Wang Zicheng. This guy was indeed unreliable. Although he did not know what happened between Wang Zicheng and the young man, it was not difficult to tell from the young man's words that Wang Zicheng had betrayed his friend. When he saw the young man fly into a rage, Wang Zicheng did not take it head-on and dodged to the side, saying anxiously, We're brothers after all. Is there a need to fight to the death the moment we meet? Brothers my ass. The young man spat in disdain and executed a mysterious footwork. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before Wang Zicheng and punched out furiously. A perfect support battle technique. Qin Feiyang's gaze narrowed. Damn it, you're serious. At the same time, Wang Zicheng's expression changed starkly as he executed a mysterious footwork without hesitation and dodged to the side. Boom! The young man punched the stone wall behind Wang Zicheng and created a huge hole. The entire cave began to tremble violently. Chapter 1002. It's also a perfect support-type battle art. Qin Feiyang dodged the falling rocks as he stared at Wang Zicheng and Wang Zicheng, his eyes flashing. Who were these two people? How could they both have perfect support-type battle arts? One had to know. Even in the Divine City and main pagoda, perfect support-type battle arts were very rare. Bang, bang, bang. Boom! Wang Zicheng and the brawny young man started a chase in the cave. But what puzzled Qin Feiyang was that not only were the two of them at the same cultivation level, but they also had perfect battle arts. In terms of strength, they were evenly matched. But Wang Zicheng had only been defending from the beginning and had never fought head-on. Could it be that this brawny young man was hiding some shocking method that made Wang Zicheng not dare to fight head-on? After a while, Wang Zicheng had a bitter face and said with a pleading tone, Big Bull, I'll apologize to you, okay? Is this something that can be solved with an apology? The brawny young man was so angry that he laughed. Wang Zicheng's temper also rose as he roared. Then what do you want? The brawny young man said, Give me all the treasures you got here. There's nothing here. How can there be treasures? Wang Zicheng said angrily. How can there be no treasures in the ruins left behind by a war emperor? Do you think I'm stupid? Selfish bastard, die for me. The brawny young man's hair shot into the heavens as he threw out another punch. His aura reached the rainbow and shook the entire island. It's true, I'm not lying to you. Ask him if you don't believe me. Wang Zicheng anxiously pointed at Qin Feiyang. The brawny young man frowned, stopped in the air, and turned to look at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang said, "We really didn't find anything here." He was not lying. Previously, under the magma, he and Wang Zicheng had searched carefully, but they did not find anything. What kind of ruins is this if there are no treasures? The brawny young man scanned the cave, his rough face filled with anger. Wang Zicheng frowned. "Big Bull, shouldn't you be in the inner sea? Why are you here? Are you following me?" "Humph, following you? You think too highly of yourself. I've discovered this ruin long ago, but I haven't been able to break the barrier at the entrance." The young man snorted coldly. Wang Zicheng said, "So you didn't stay in the inner sea after we separated last time?" "That's right. After we separated, I came here directly to find a way to break the barrier, but I haven't found any clues. Just as I was about to leave, you guys came. I thought that there would be some great treasure in here, but I didn't expect that there wouldn't even be a single strand of hair. What a waste of time." The muscular young man said. "I knew it." Qin Feiyang was deep in thought when the young man was telling the story. After the young man finished speaking, he immediately asked, "Did you hear it from that falcon?" "No, that falcon found out about it from me, because I was the first one to discover the ruins." The muscular young man said, "You discovered it?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said, "Don't tell me that you deliberately designed the falcon to tell me the location of the ruins." Yes, I deliberately designed it. Because I can't do anything, I want you to try. But I only told it to tell you, but I didn't expect that bastard to secretly follow me. Originally, I was quite unhappy, but on second thought, why don't I take advantage of this opportunity to kill him here?" The muscular young man looked at Wang Zicheng and sneered. Wang Zicheng was furious and shouted, "You bastard, you actually plan to kill me? So what?" The muscular young man looked at him provocatively. Okay, I'll play with you today." Wang Zicheng was so angry that he laughed, and his aura suddenly erupted. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." The muscular young man laughed angrily, and the muscles all over his body exploded, filled with a destructive force. "Okay, I'll send you to hell today." Wang Zicheng growled, and with a surging aura, he charged toward the muscular young man. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang quickly retreated to the side. The battle between the two was not something he could participate in. However, just when Qin Feiyang thought that the two of them would definitely fight until the sky turned dark, Wang Zicheng suddenly turned in the air and rushed into the tunnel like lightning. After that, he rushed towards the deep sea outside without even looking back. What's going on? Running away without fighting? Qin Feiyang was stunned. The muscular young man was also dumbfounded. Haha, Big Bull. Do you think I'm stupid to fight you head-on? I don't have the energy. I'm going to pick up girls, goodbye. Wang Zicheng's complacent laughter echoed in the tunnel. Bastard, don't run. The muscular young man was immediately furious and chased after Wang Zicheng. That's it. Qin Feiyang's expression was strange. Why did he feel that the relationship between these two was like his relationship with Wang Yu? These two are really the best. He shook his head, glanced at the grotto in disappointment, and also flew toward the tunnel. He came here full of expectations, but he did not expect to return disappointed. His efforts were in vain. Qin Feiyang, wait. But suddenly, a voice entered Qin Feiyang's ears. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang stopped and lowered his head to look at the spirit snake emperor coiled around his wrist. This emperor seems to have found something. After the spirit snake emperor finished speaking, it flew out and floated somewhere on the left side of the grotto. Its ethereal little eyes kept scanning the stone wall in front of it. Qin Feiyang turned around and saw that there was a broken hole in the wall in front of the spirit snake emperor. It was the result of the punch from the muscular young man. He walked over suspiciously and stood beside the spirit snake emperor to observe it closely, but he did not find anything strange. Just when he was about to ask, the spirit snake emperor suddenly raised its head and looked at the top of the hole. The rocks there were also broken. There is indeed a problem. A few seconds later, a light flashed across the spirit snake emperor's eyes. What problem? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Shua! The spirit snake emperor flew up, raised its tail, and pointed at the broken rock, saying, "Come and take a look. Is there a ray of light that is different from the magma in this crack?" Different light from the magma? Qin Feiyang was startled, and hurriedly flew to the side of the spirit snake emperor and looked over. Yeah, soon. A trace of surprise crept up in his eyes. Between the cracks of this rock, there was indeed a ray of light of a different color. This grotto had been burned by the magma all year round and had long turned red. However, the light that seeped out from the cracks of the rock was white. It was just that it was very weak. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to find it. Could it be that there is something hidden inside? Qin Feiyang looked at the spirit snake emperor. Could it be the treasure left behind by the war emperor? The spirit snake emperor also looked at Qin Feiyang. Immediately, the man and the snake were both in high spirits. Qin Feiyang immediately raised his hand, placed it on the rock, and shook it forcefully. Boom! Accompanied by a low and deep sound, a large piece of rock instantly shattered. A bright cave immediately appeared in front of Qin Feiyang and the spirit snake emperor. At the same time, a terrifying stream of heat surged out from the cave. This heat current was actually countless times more terrifying than the temperature of the magma. Even the 9 stars war sex spirit snake emperor could not withstand it. Qin Feiyang immediately activated a battle chi barrier to protect the spirit snake emperor. Following closely, Qin Feiyang and the spirit snake emperor scanned the cave in front of them. The cave was about 50 to 60 feet tall, and a palm-sized flame floated in the middle. However, this flame was different from other flames. This flame was completely white like a bone flame. It was clearly emitting an extremely high temperature, but it gave off a gloomy and cold feeling. And the light they saw outside was the light emitted by this pill fire. Below the flame, there was a jade box lying quietly on the ground, covered in a thick layer of dust. Other than that, there was nothing else in the cave. Qin Feiyang and the spirit snake emperor looked at each other, and both of them rushed into the cave and landed in front of the white flame. The temperature is so high, it should be a pill fire, right? The spirit snake emperor looked at it for a while and said, suspiciously, "Let's give it a try. If we can sign a blood contract, it will definitely be a pill fire." Qin Feiyang cut his finger, and drops of purple gold dragon blood continuously flowed towards the white flame. A moment later, the flame suddenly emitted a wisp of blood light. Seeing this situation, Qin Feiyang and the spirit snake emperor were overjoyed, because this was the sign of a successful blood contract. After successfully signing the blood contract, a wave of information also entered Qin Feiyang's mind. At that moment, his body trembled, and a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. "What is it?" The spirit snake emperor looked at him in surprise. Qin Feiyang said excitedly, "This is a pill fire, and it's a 7th grade pill fire." What? The spirit snake emperor was dumbfounded. Their luck was too heaven-defying. How long had it been since they came to Qinghai, and they actually encountered a 7th grade pill fire? "I didn't expect it. I really didn't expect it." Qin Feiyang laughed heartily. Now, as long as he could get the 7th grade pill fire in the internal sea, he would only need one more. It seemed that it wouldn't be long before the nether devil flame could be upgraded to the 8th grade. Sure enough, luck was on his side, and he couldn't stop it. Then, Qin Feiyang bent down again and grabbed the jade box on the ground. If the pill fire was 7th grade, then the thing in the jade box must be even more amazing. He couldn't wait to open it. However, he was surprised to find that he couldn't open the jade box. What's going on? Qin Feiyong was stunned. The Spirit Snake Emperor's eyes were also full of surprise. Qin Feiyong tried a few more times and simply put it away and said to the Spirit Snake Emperor, "We'll study this later. Quickly look for other things." One man and one snake immediately got up in the cave. "Hey, come and see, what's this white powder?" After a few breaths, the Spirit Snake Emperor's surprised voice suddenly sounded. Qin Feiyong hurried over and looked down at the ground, which was covered with a layer of white powder. He squatted on the ground, stretched out his index finger, dipped it with the tip of his finger, put it on the tip of his nose and sniffed, and suddenly frowned. "Can you smell it?" the Spirit Snake Emperor asked. "Yes." Qin Feiyong nodded and said, "This is the ashes of a person who should be the owner of this pill fire." "I see." The Spirit Snake Emperor suddenly lost interest, but suddenly seemed to think of something and said, "Since he died here, his Qiankuan bag should also be here. Why don't I see it? The temperature here is so high, even if there was a Qiankuan bag, it would have been burned to ashes." Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. "That's right." The Spirit Snake Emperor nodded and then turned its head to look elsewhere. Chapter 1003. But in the end, it ended in disappointment. In the cave, there were no other secret rooms or compartments. There were no other treasures. However, Qin Feiyong was content, not to mention what was in the jade box, just the 7th grade pill fire. This trip to Qinghai was not in vain. Whoosh! Putting away the 7th grade pill fire, a man and a snake rushed out of the cave. The Phantom Snake Emperor turned into an exquisite jade bracelet and wrapped around Qin Feiyong's wrist. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and a stream of battle qi rushed into the cave. The cave immediately collapsed. The ashes would be buried here forever. "It's time to leave," Qin Feiyong whispered, then turned and rushed into the tunnel, flying out of the sea like lightning. In fact, this time, although it was the Phantom Snake Emperor who found the cave, the real person who should be grateful was that blockhead. After all, if it wasn't for that blockhead who smashed the stone wall with one punch, the Phantom Snake Emperor would have found the cave. Along the way, Qin Feiyong could clearly sense the aura of Wang Zicheng and the other man. A moment later, he finally rushed out of the tunnel and entered the deep sea. The water avoidance pearl was glowing with a dim luster, isolating all the water pressure. Then, he waved his hand again, collapsed the tunnel, and rushed to the sea. Boom! Splash! Very soon, he immediately sensed a series of powerful ripples of battle. Whoosh! 10 breaths passed. Finally, Qin Feiyong rushed out of the sea and stood in the sky, looking at the island in front of him. He saw Wang Zicheng and the young man fighting in the air above the island. The terrifying aura was earth-shattering. The nearby sea waves were monstrous, and the island was about to be torn apart. As for the ferocious beasts on the island, they had already fled. "Big Barbarian Bull, are you done yet?" Wang Zicheng shouted. He was still defending and looked very embarrassed. "I said that I will tear you apart today." The young man's aura was like thunder, and an invisible force roared in all directions. He was like a giant spirit god, and his every move could shake the sky. "Damn! Do you really think that I can't do anything to you? Tai Ching illusion!" Wang Zicheng roared at the sky, and another Wang Zicheng appeared beside him. The two kings grew up to be exactly the same. Even their behavior and strength were the same. Those who didn't know would definitely think that the two of them were twins. "Beat him up." Following closely, with a low roar, the two Wang Zicheng moved together, attacking the young man from the left and right. Faced with the storm-like attacks of the two Wang Zicheng, the muscular young man was a little flustered. A short while later, His body was riddled with wounds. Is this a cloning technique? Spirit Serpent Emperor was bewildered. Qin Feiyong was silent, but his eyes were extremely solemn. The brawny young man's battle prowess was obvious to all and could not be underestimated. However, Wang Zicheng's strength was also somewhat astonishing. The strength displayed by the doppelganger was in no way inferior to Wang Zicheng's real body. In other words, the young man was now facing Tu Wang Zicheng at his peak. Boom! Puff! After a dozen breaths of intense battle, the youth was sent flying by Wang Zicheng's avatar with a single palm strike, causing him to wildly vomit blood. However, when the brawny young man stabilized his body, he grinned without the slightest fear. Your Tai Ching illusion is still as headache-inducing as ever. However, you should also know my strength. The Tai Ching illusion is useless against me. King Ming's celestial phenomenon. At the end of his words, the brawny young man suddenly roared towards the sky. A shocking scene appeared. His 2-meter-tall body began to grow with the wind. In the blink of an eye, a 5-meter-tall giant appeared. The muscles all over his body were like a dragon, releasing a destructive aura. Have a taste of my fist. The brawny young man waved his millstone-sized fist and furiously smashed it towards Wang Zicheng. Wang Zicheng's expression changed as he quickly retreated. However, the doppelganger was shattered by the brawny young man's punch. Puff! Wang Zicheng spat out a mouthful of blood and said angrily, I'll ask you one last time. Do you really want to fight to the death today? Do I look like I'm joking? The brawny young man punched again, and a terrifying force shook the surroundings. It was simple and violent. All right, then don't blame me for being impolite. Azure Dragon Seal. Wang Zicheng's gaze turned cold as he once again used the Tai Ching illusion, and another doppelganger appeared. Following that, the original body and the doppelganger raised their hands at the same time and placed them in front of their chests to form seals. A destructive aura quickly rolled out from between their hands, destroying everything in all directions. Azure Dragon Seal. The brawny young man's gaze froze, and his expression became extremely solemn. It was obvious that he was also quite afraid of Wang Zicheng's move. These two people are too terrifying. They are strong enough to be considered heroes below the War Emperor. The Spirit Snake Emperor said in a low voice. That's right. Qin Feiyong nodded. If the War Emperor did not appear, no one would be able to take them down. They were two true invincible kings. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong seemed to have discovered something as he turned to look at the other side of the island. He immediately saw a group of people rushing over. How did they find this place? Qin Feiyong was bewildered as a cold light flashed in his eyes, because the person in the lead was the white-haired old man. At the same time, the white-haired old man and the others also entered the island and stood in the distance, watching the battle between Wang Zicheng and the brawny young man. It's them. Wang Zicheng naturally also noticed the white-haired old man and frowned slightly. But the white-haired old man did not recognize Wang Zicheng, because Wang Zicheng's current appearance had become old. Why do I feel a sense of familiarity from the aura he's emitting? However, among the group of people behind the white-haired old man, someone noticed something strange. That's right. I remember now. His aura is exactly the same as the person who helped Ancestor Mu escape. But that's not right. Wasn't it a young man who helped Ancestor Mu escape? The group of people were bewildered. No, it's him. His appearance can be changed, but his aura is very difficult to change. Furthermore, the way you look at him is exactly the same as that person's. The white-haired old man looked at Wang Zicheng seriously for a moment, and killing intent flashed in his old eyes. In that case, it really is him. So it's him who's fighting with someone. Is Ancestor Mu also nearby? The group of people immediately scanned their surroundings. Finally, the white-haired old man discovered Qin Feiyang, who was standing in the air above the sea, and a trace of coldness crept up his old face. "I'll kill him alone. You guys go and help that burly man kill that person." Immediately, the white-haired old man ordered, and with a murderous aura, he swept towards Qin Feiyang. The other 31 nine-star battle saints also immediately charged towards Wang Zicheng. "Oh no, I've been recognized." Seeing this, Wang Zicheng's heart trembled. He hurriedly looked at the burly young man and said anxiously, "Big barbarian bull, we're in trouble. Quickly stop." The burly young man glanced at the 31 nine-star battle saints who were charging towards him. He raised his thick eyebrows and shouted, "All of you get lost!" "Don't misunderstand. We're here to help you." A middle-aged man smiled kindly. "Do I still need your help? This is a personal grudge between me and him. Get lost immediately." The burly young man roared. His voice was like thunder, shaking the ears of the group of people. "You don't know what's good for you. Kill the two of them together." The middle-aged man laughed sinisterly. The 31 nine-star battle saints waved their arms in unison. Streaks of battle aura roared out, drowning the sky. "You're courting death." The burly young man was furious. He immediately abandoned Wang Zicheng and charged towards the 31 nine-star battle saints. His entire body was boiling with battle intent, and there was not the slightest bit of fear. "Ha ha, big barbarian bull. I knew that you haven't forgotten about me, your brother. Today, let's work together again and kill all these reckless fellows." Wang Zicheng laughed loudly and also charged over with his doppelganger. "Who wants to work together with you?" "Just these pieces of trash. I alone am enough." The burly young man smiled disdainfully, displaying an incomparable domineering aura. Without a doubt, the 31 nine-star battle saints were completely enraged. They were all 9-star battle saints, but he actually dared to call them trash. Too arrogant. At the same time, in the sky above the sea, Qin Feiyang looked at the white-haired old man approaching and snorted coldly. "You're really like a lingering spirit." The white-haired old man turned his head and glanced at Wang Zicheng and Wang Zicheng. He then looked at Qin Feiyang and sneered. "I have to thank the two of them. If they weren't fighting here, I wouldn't have known that you were hiding here." The white-haired old man originally planned to go to the inland sea and wait there. However, when he passed by the island, he suddenly felt the fluctuations of a battle here. Thus, he curiously came over to take a look. He didn't expect that Qin Feiyang would be here. Qin Feiyang frowned and shook his head with a smile. "Laugh while you still have time, because you won't be able to laugh soon." "Really?" The white-haired old man smiled playfully. Qin Feiyang glanced at Wang Zicheng and Wang Zicheng and said indifferently, "Didn't you notice their strength? The group of trash you brought isn't enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. You don't have to worry about that." The white-haired old man chuckled. He indeed didn't know the strength of Wang Zicheng and Wang Zicheng, but the 31 people he brought were all 9-star battle saints. 2 9-star battle saints against 31 9-star battle saints. Even if the two of them were heaven-defying, they still had no chance of winning. "Is that so? Then let's wait and see," Qin Feiyang said. "Wait and see? You're too naive. Do you think I'll give you a chance to struggle at death's door?" The white-haired old man's speed became faster and faster. His emperor's aura also emerged and rushed toward Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he suddenly said, "Guo Xiangzhong." The white-haired old man's body suddenly trembled, and a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. "It's really you," Qin Feiyang sneered. Although the white-haired old man didn't respond directly, his reaction was enough to prove everything. "I don't know what you're talking about." The white-haired old man's killing intent surged. No matter what, he had to eliminate this kid today. Otherwise, the Chilean tribe would face a great disaster. However, at this moment, cries of agony echoed in the sky. The white-haired old man was shocked and immediately turned his head to look. His face immediately turned pale with fright. He saw that the tribesmen he brought were as vulnerable as dead wood in front of Wang Zicheng and Wang Zicheng. No, that was simply a massacre. Chapter 1004. This feels great. Wang Zicheng was delighted. Previously, because of the white-haired old man, he could not fight as freely as he did now. Of course, the burly young man was also a huge factor. Both of them were invincible kings and could share a lot of his burden. Am I someone to be trifled with? Obviously not. All of you go to hell and repent. Wang Zicheng's hair fluttered in the wind. He was like a god of death, venting the anger in his heart. One had to know, not long ago, when they escaped, he had burned half of his lifespan. Although he did not seem to care, his heart ached for it. Most importantly, he felt very embarrassed when he escaped in a sorry state. Therefore, he wanted to pay back 10 times, 100 times. Why is it that the current him is different from before? Could it be that something happened before? Looking at Wang Zicheng's current appearance, the burly young man was full of doubts. He knew Wang Zicheng too well. He had seen Wang Zicheng's current appearance more than once. It was obvious that he had used that forbidden skill. In other words, it was highly possible that these people had forced him to use the forbidden skill. Wang Zicheng shouted as he slaughtered in all directions. Big barbarian bull, they are all my prey. Hurry up and scram to the side. Bullshit, they are my prey. The burly young man shouted angrily. His 5-meter tall body was filled with a destructive aura as he stomped in the air. 2 middle-aged men were directly stomped into meat patties and died on the spot. His methods were extremely cruel. Scoundrel! Wang Zicheng was not to be outdone. He used the perfect auxiliary skill and rushed to the front of a burly man. With one palm, he shattered the burly man's heart. At the same time, his doppelganger also used the same perfect support-type battle art and instantly killed one of them. They are simply 2 demons. Run. The remaining 9-star combat saints were scared out of their wits and frantically fled. Hee, isn't it too late to run now? Wang Zicheng smiled coldly and chased after them with his avatar. Scoundrel, you are hunting my prey. Don't blame me for turning hostile. The burly young man shouted angrily and used a mysterious footwork to chase after them. All of them have mastered perfect support-type battle arts. Who are they? The white-haired old man watched with trepidation. Were the young people of Qinghai so terrifying? Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and said, I told you the people you brought are not enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Who are they? The white-haired old man abruptly turned his head and stared at Qin Feiyang like a ferocious beast choosing its prey. Who they are is not important. What's important is that if you don't go and help, the trash you brought will all die. Qin Feiyang sneered. It's all right, because you'll be buried with them. The white-haired old man was so angry that his hair stood on end. He rushed towards Qin Feiyang with a murderous look. Naive. The corners of Qin Feiyang's mouth curled up slightly. He turned into a stream of light and charged into the sea below. The white-haired old man followed him into the sea. But looking around, there was no trace of Qin Feiyang. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Where is he? Where are you hiding? Come out. The white-haired old man was so angry that his aura swept in all directions. The calm sea suddenly became turbulent and huge. Waves covered the sky. At the same time, on the other side of the island, accompanied by 3 desperate screams, the 31 nine-star battle saints were also completely annihilated. Their corpses floated in the void, and their blood dyed the sky red. Continue our battle. The young man did not stop at all and immediately charged towards Wang Zicheng. I'm not free now. After Wang Zicheng said this, he turned around and flew towards the sea where Qin Feiyang was. What's going on? He's actually worried. What the hell? This selfish bastard is actually worried about others. Is he still the Wang Zicheng I know? The brawny young man was shocked. Then he also flew toward the sea. Boom! Splash! At this moment, the white-haired old man rushed out of the sea with monstrous anger. His eyes were firmly fixed on Wang Zicheng and Wang Zicheng. His clothes and long hair fluttered in the wind. Beneath his feet, the waves were surging. At this moment, he was like a demon king standing on the top of the waves, exuding a terrifying aura. Not good. Run. Wang Zicheng's pupils shrank. He immediately dispersed his doppelganger and turned to escape. The young man looked at the white-haired old man's eyes and could not help but be frightened. He fled with Wang Zicheng. Both of you will die. The white-haired old man let out a fierce roar. Like an arrow, he suddenly tore through the air. In just a few blinks of an eye, he was in front of Wang Zicheng and Wang Zicheng. The two of them braked and stopped in the void. They looked at the white-haired old man with gloomy faces. What should we do? The young man asked secretly. Wang Zicheng said, What else can we do? We can only rely on your forbidden technique. The young man raised his eyebrows and sneered, Don't you also have a forbidden technique? Why don't you activate it? You want to trick me. Trick your sister. If I could activate it, would I beg you? Wang Zicheng said angrily. The young man's heart skipped a beat as he sent a voice transmission. When did you activate the forbidden technique? Wang Zicheng said in a deep voice not long ago. In fact, it lasted for about 50 breaths. The young man's eyes widened and he said in shock and anger, 50 breaths? You really don't want to live anymore. Can you cut the crap now and kill him with your forbidden technique? Wang Zicheng roared anxiously. In the blink of an eye, the white-haired old man pointed his index finger in the air and a resplendent battle chi appeared. It carried a bone-chilling killing intent as it roared towards Wang Zicheng and Wang Zicheng. Fuck. Seems like we'll have to fight with our lives on the line today. Blood, burn. The young man gritted his teeth and a scarlet blood mist rose from his body. Roar, immediately after. His 5-meter-tall body expanded once more. However, he seemed to be in pain and let out a beast-like roar. However, the aura he exuded was increasing wildly. The white-haired old man was surprised, but his old face was instantly filled with a sneer as he said, There is an insurmountable gap between a war emperor and a war saint. No matter how hard you struggle, no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to block this old man's attack. After all, you are just an ant. Roar! The young man turned a deaf ear to him and continued to roar towards the sky. His aura also became more and more terrifying. Finally, his swollen body stopped. However, at this moment, his tall and sturdy body was more than 100 feet tall, as if a giant spirit god had descended. Old bastard, you're too arrogant. Immediately after, the young man punched down. Just his fist alone was like a small mountain. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening sound, the white-haired old man's battle chi was actually shattered by him. Damn, this is simply divine power. On the surface of the sea, a head popped out. It was Qin Feiyang. Seeing this scene, his eyes were filled with shock. A 9-star war saint was able to disperse the war emperor's battle chi with a single punch. How terrifying was this power? The white-haired old man was also dumbfounded and filled with disbelief. So what if you're a war emperor? If you provoke me, I'll still destroy you. The young man directly stomped towards the white-haired old man. It was as if he was possessed by a demon. domineering, and overbearing. Then come and try. The white-haired old man sneered and quickly rushed up to the sky, slapping the young man's foot with his palm. The battle chi in his palm surged, and with an unparalleled sharpness, it tore the flesh on the young man's foot into pieces. Roar! However, this aroused the young man's battle intent and anger. He roared and stomped down with all his might. The white-haired old man in the air was shocked to find that he could not block this force and kept sinking down. Moreover, there was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. How is this possible? Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. This blockhead actually injured the white-haired old man? How strong was his power at this moment? Although we are all 9 Star Wars saints, once we put our lives on the line, we can still kill a 1-Star War emperor. Because we are the Blue Sea's 10 heroes, the kings of the Blue Sea. No one can defeat us. Wang Zicheng stood in the air and looked down at the white-haired old man with an air of arrogance. What? Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. So these two were the Blue Sea's 10 heroes. No wonder they were so unbelievably strong. I don't care if you're the Blue Sea's 10 heroes or the Blue Sea's 10 dogs. Anyone who provokes me must die, the white-haired old man shouted. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and punched the young man's foot. Roar! Bang! The young man roared in pain, and his huge body fell down, smashing onto the island below. A few tall mountain ridges were instantly razed to the ground. Wang Zicheng raised his eyebrows. Old bastard, you have completely infuriated me. The young man roared and jumped up. His mountain-like fist smashed towards the white-haired old man crazily. An ant will always be an ant. Even if you have the strength to fight against the combat emperor, once I use my battle art, you'll be nothing but a chicken or a dog. You won't be able to withstand a single blow. The white-haired old man landed on the broken ground and looked at the two with disdain. At the same time, he formed a seal with his hands in front of his chest. A shocking aura spread out. It was obvious that he was practicing some kind of battle art. Hey, did you forget about me? Before the white-haired old man could finish his words, a sneer sounded behind him. When did he go over? Qin Feiyang stared at Wang Zicheng in disbelief. He was still in the air just a moment ago. How did he suddenly appear behind the white-haired old man? Moreover, he was holding a dagger in his hand that was shining coldly. However, when he saw the blood mist rising from Wang Zicheng's body, he understood. Wang Zicheng had also activated the forbidden skill. But there was another problem. Wang Zicheng needed the correct posture and chant to activate the forbidden skill, right? But he didn't see Wang Zicheng preparing for it just now. The white-haired old man was also in disbelief. This speed was too ridiculously fast, wasn't it? Even he didn't notice it. The big bull is just a cover. I am the one who is going to take your life. Wang Zicheng's eyes were filled with killing intent. The dagger in his hand directly pierced into the white-haired old man's sea of energy. Ah! The white-haired old man instantly screamed. His old face was filled with hatred and indignation. Even if I die, I will drag you down to hell with me. The combat emperor was a combat emperor after all. Even if his sea of energy was destroyed and his cultivation was lost, he didn't give up resisting. He suddenly turned around and slammed his palm towards Wang Zicheng's chest. Wang Zicheng grinned. He moved his feet slightly and retreated a few feet away. The white-haired old man missed his attack and lost his balance. He fell to the ground, looking extremely pathetic. So powerful. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.